we're getting near to the end of our term, not quite there yet. We've made no progress on it. So the question is how do we get people together to say, how can we come up with some plan to start moving on the Eastern Corridor if something can happen in this economic climate? I don't know if it can or can't. We all know the hotel's delayed. Interest rates are too high. We know that the other corner of 4th and Main or whatever is going to stay undeveloped for a while. So the question is how do we go about this corridor? Do we just let it happen organically? People just kind of, as because it's all piecemeal, right? If it just gets annexed in organically, does some industry like the wedding industry or the music industry just naturally pop up without us trying? Or should we proactively try to do something? And so that's why we're trying to get people together to say, what's our best route here? Keeping in mind a vision of, can we increase our town's budget by 35 to 40% over a 10, 15-year period? I'll stop here. That's the best I can summarize it.
Yeah, and I think, so what we want to look at is what kind of industry do we want to attract? And so I've been thinking for the past little bit about light industrial or manufacturing that would pay excise tax. And so that's a question. I see Cassie's on the line. That's a question for Cassie is, I don't even know what those are. I mean, I know marijuana infused products pays excise tax, but are there others that we should think about trying to bring in?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right now, our code only allows for excise tax on marijuana infused products and marijuana, that's being shipped. So that is one area where we'll be able to capture other areas. And Brandon might have to correct me if I'm wrong, but because it's a tax, I believe it would have to go to voters. But other areas that see these types of excise tax are things like liquor, cigarettes, obviously fuel, things like that. But at a local level, I think if we were interested in that, we would probably have to bring it to the voters. Is that right, Brandon?
That's 100% correct. It would require a Tabor election.
Yeah. There are definitely other areas to explore, and I don't know if this is the workshop, to discuss that. But Trustee Edding mentioned, we're a fairly wealthy community, high property values. Unfortunately, because of the way our community voted, and I can't remember years and years ago when they wanted to de-Bruce in regards to Tabor, they specifically called out property tax. So while we're seeing property values increase exponentially, over the past few years, and definitely over this year, we limited ourselves to 5.5% growth of that. So what that means is that our revenue can only grow 5.5%, excluding growth related. So when our property tax values increase significantly, unfortunately, the town does not get to see that increase. We're limited to 5.5%. So therefore we ratchet down our mill levy to basically make it so that we're only growing that revenue source by 5.5%. Any of the other taxing entities for Lions do not have that I'm aware of. So they capture all of the property tax increase from the assessed values. So that is one thing kind of that always comes to my mind when I'm thinking of, yes, we are a wealthier or well-off community, but we limited ourselves in certain aspects. There are definitely other things that the board could do, because that would take an election to remove that. That would take an election. We'd have to go to the voters for that. There's some smaller things that we could do. And I don't know if you want me to mention any of those now, or if we want to wait till budget time, but.
No, go ahead. Let's start thinking about it.
Okay. So the one thing that really pops into my mind is when we collect sales tax, we allow the vendors to take or keep 3.25% of that sales tax, kind of like an admin fee. Many communities don't allow that. Some people allow it. And and but they cap it like at $25. I'll tell you the individuals or the municipalities, excuse me, that don't allow it are very many of our neighbors. Boulder County doesn't allow this service fee. Louisville, Boulder, Meade, Nederland, Fort Collins, Loveland, Denver doesn't allow vendors to keep that. For the town, that would be 50 to 60,000 extra dollars a year that we are allowing vendors to keep to remit the sales tax that they are required to remit anyways. And this is all vendors. This is the Amazons, this is the Wayfarers, this is everybody, not just our local vendors. So you think we collect 1.7 million in sales tax every year, if kind of just, and it doesn't work out exactly, but 3.33% of that, anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 that we're just allowing them to keep, that many communities don't. And these are communities that are a lot larger than us. Yeah.
Question on that. Can you keep your locals where they can continue to have that administrative 3.5%, but you can, disallow it for large mail-in corporations?
Yeah, great question, Mayor Pro Tem Farrell. I talked with the state because they are the ones who, collect our sales tax on our behalf, and then they remit it to us. And we would not be able to do that. In fact, it was mentioned to me that it is because it is so hard for them to program all the different instances and nuances that it's a good chance that they might even get rid of the ability to say, okay, we will let you keep a vendor fee like up to capped at $25, because there are a certain amount of communities that do that. And that would make more sense to me is, okay, it costs you, maybe I submit sales tax for the town. It takes me 15-20 minutes, honestly. It's a simple report. You put your numbers in, as long as your books are good and you know where you're pulling your numbers from. It is a very simple process, but they cap it at $25. It was mentioned that the state is likely to get rid of this in the near future because it is such an IT and administrative burden for them to rewrite their system that way. So if we were to change anything, it was recommended. We can definitely say we cap it at $25, but it is very likely that they're going to get rid of it in the near future. So it might be an administrative burden then on our end to get rid of the cap, but that is another option.
Brandon?
And just as a general piece of advice, whenever you're thinking about, can we create different tax structures for, local versus non-local, generally that's going to fall foul of the Equal Protection Clause, because we're required to basically apply the laws equally to all people, no matter who they are, unless there's some way categorically different and, the ability to serve those people or something. And so I don't think just being in town versus out of town is a distinction that it costs us more to collect those taxes or anything, that they're all doing business in town. So it'd be really tough to justify from Equal Protection Clause standpoint that would be legal. And it's probably gonna be that case for pretty much all taxes. So
So
Cassie, do you have more ideas? Keep going.
Yeah, so obviously the first one was the property tax, but again, that would require voter approval. We could, in lieu of getting rid of that 5.5%, we could go to them and ask for an increase in the mill levy over the 5.5%, specifically designated for capital purposes. It doesn't happen very often because many municipalities don't necessarily have that 5.5% cap. So the ones that do are the only ones that this would kind of apply to. That doesn't have to go to voters, I don't believe. And I just need to go back and double check. That one wouldn't have to go to voters, but to put a specific mill levy designated towards a road project for bonds or something like that would have to go for voter approval. But because we have that 5.5% limitation, that's one of the things. And to be honest, I don't know that there's, aside from even sales tax increases, 1%, 0.5% designated towards capital. We're small. I don't know that there's gonna, we're gonna have to, if we're not gonna go for something that's gonna generate something larger, we're gonna have to take some of these little pieces, just like we did with local marijuana last year. Great step. We already saw the increase starting in May's revenue. So that, is something small, but it's a great step. Same with the short-term rentals. We're going to start seeing that start to come in because, next year will come in a full year of 2024 rentals. So that will start to come in. I know that there's been discussion of looking at communities and their short-term rental license fees. Ours is pretty low. Are there things like that we can do? But again, I think we have to look at the smaller things unless we're willing to go to the voters. I mean, aside from getting commercial in, and when I say, commercial, and this is probably obvious to everybody, it's commercial retail. It's because then you're hitting both property tax and you're also hitting sales tax. Residential is great as well. We get the property tax. But again, remember, we're limited on that property tax growth.
And residential doesn't pay for itself.
It doesn't. There's lots of studies out there because you're increasing the residents. Maybe then you're having to increase your police activity, your park activity, all of that type of stuff. Your
maintenance. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been one thing on our minds is our percentage of the town that's residential compared to what's commercial. Because I know in Colorado, because of Gallagher, you pay a lot more commercial real estate taxes than you do residential. But Gallagher has got unwound last year, right?
It did.
Will there be an increase from that? Or because I didn't quite understand how it became undone.
Yeah, it is really confusing. I put Gallagher in the Tabor basket because I feel like they're very confusing. And I think because we are capped at our revenue, I don't know that it's really going to impact us as much as it would for the other municipalities that, that are completely debruced and can collect whatever the assessed values say that, that they have.
Brandon?
And there's going to be a legislatively referred ballot measure to limit, kind of the impact of the de-Gallagherization of that. So it may not even have the full effect of, really increasing, those taxes. Yeah. So.
Well, it's not our intent here to up property taxes because nobody wants that, right? It's really to build an economic engine, maybe in the Eastern Corridor, and then find additional ways to stop retail leakage. Because obviously every time we go to Longmont, I'm fixing their roads, not ours. And it gets to me when you start looking at the numbers and stuff. And I don't think everybody in town really appreciates how bad retail leakage is. So,
yeah.
All right.
And then another thing is to really, we encourage shop local, absolutely. Where it makes sense, shop local. If you can, shop online, have it delivered to your house because we get all of that sales tax as well.
Yep.
Instead of
Longmont, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious, the current conversations and really historical conversations around to the Eastern Corridor expansion and the retail leakage, all the things that you just mentioned, in terms of things we've tried or things that could potentially be on the table for incentivizing new businesses. And Attorney Dittman, maybe this goes to like the legality of things of being fair, equal, but like, can we do, I know this has happened in other communities, but I don't know the details of like first 3 year of tax exemption for new businesses or somehow investing in to recruit new businesses. I'm just curious on current conversations or what's on or off the table around those incentivizing new businesses.
We haven't had that conversation as a board. And so at this point, I don't think there's anything that's off the table because nothing has been put on it. So let's put some stuff on it.
And maybe just a preface to this conversation is that, the equal protection concerns I mentioned earlier, that's really against, that's enforcement of the law, right? It's different from incentivizing someone to do something. And so we shouldn't have any concerns about oh, we're doing something in violation of the Equal Protection Clause. Now, there may be other legal concerns, but that's not one of them for business incentives.
Got it, thanks.
Go ahead, Dolores.
Years ago, when they were trying to get people to annex on the eastern border, I think you'll remember this, Mike.
Sure.
The board incentivized, those property owners to annex into the town, and they gave them, I think, a water tap and a sewer tap at the time to have them pull into town.
We had a whole incentive package,
Yeah,
but that was annexation
that was
versus
annexation.
like relocation or starting your business.
Yeah.
But we can certainly, work with EBC and put together a plan if we want to,
I would love to see some
but it
options
is so
for that.
dependent on the type of business.
Yeah,
I mean, if it's a heavy water industry or sewer industry,
They're not gonna come here.
it's,
No.
do you want to incentivize that knowing it's gonna cost everyone else?
no,
So we have to be kind of careful when you start creating these, if you want us to come up with some levers you could pull based on an individual application, we could certainly do that.
well, and I think part of the conversation is discussing what types of industries do we want to try to attract. So, for example, we probably don't want to try to attract a water heavy industry for business, but maybe, some sort of more assembly focused, something like bicycle manufacturing and sales,
Well, Mike, I mean, we have how many wedding venues here in town?
But
But nobody proactively said, let's get into the wedding industry and called you from Boulder and you moved here and opened them. It just kind of happened, right?
It kind of happened organically. Lions Crest, of course, has been doing it for a long time. Planet Bluegrass did it some. Fred kind of backed off and they decided to get back into it again for a number of years, but ours were pretty organic. And of course, Riverbend happened because of the flood. Because we never would have been a wedding venue had not been for the flood. But the farmette was prior to that, and that happened very organically. And we did take advantage of the incentive to annex when the town was giving taps. We had the dedicated water, of course, but the taps were no money out of the town's pocket. And I would think that the farmette's presence has more than paid for the fact that we got those taps through the years. With the average wedding cost $100,000. I realize that, $30,000, but with the guests that come to a wedding, the average guest pays $700 to come to a wedding. So each wedding could be close to $100,000 event. Lions doesn't get all of that, of course. Some of it's airfare and gifts and clothing, but they do get some of it through accommodations. People stay in town on Airbnbs and stuff. So I think that if we could bring the numbers on that, it would prove that that was a good investment for the town.
I recently was talking to someone like just last week who was kind of looking at Lion from outside. And they said, with 5 wedding venues, why hasn't the small business sector, let alone trying to bring people to these corridors? But where is a photographer and a caterer and a florist and a bakery? Why don't you have those basic things? Why hasn't anyone started those
the
here?
wedding industrial
And
complex.
so we talked about the cost of commercial taxes and owning brick and mortar here in town and how, you have to make a lot of money to be able to pay your monthly rents here. And, but for them, it was very odd. They were like, your small business sector hasn't even stepped up level the big guys first.
Our proximity to Boulder and Lions is going to be a big burden forever. There's a certain number of stores that will never open here because it's so convenient to go to Boulder and Longmont. And we just can't compete with those stores. And that will always be the case. That's why we have to have unique businesses that draw people. We can't get
But you would think that that many built-in weddings, we'd at least have a basic photographer or a caterer here in town.
Well, and so maybe we look at, what can we do to incentivize those wedding support services, right? Like, if we had a commercial kitchen that we could rent, that a caterer could use.
But I don't know what we get from them.
Yeah.
Nothing.
We wouldn't get sales tax.
No, it's a service. We don't get sales tax off of services, only goods and products.
Yeah, but we do get sales. So when the caterers bring in from Boulder and Longmont, when they bring in, we do get sales tax off of those, the food, the product, the alcohol. So if we already get sales tax off of those vendors that are coming in from out of town. as long as it's delivered the product is delivered in the town of Lyons.
They're big. These people were from out of town and they were like, the key to all of this is a hotel that's somewhere in their main corridor. So
I'm
that
like-
people are sleeping
Yeah.
and waking up in the morning and eating breakfast
Yeah,
and drinking. it.
Yeah.
yeah, we know.
We would
that.
love
It's
that
so-
hotel to be
yeah.
started tomorrow. Yeah.
Another thing, I know this is an ongoing conversation as well, but I'm just curious where the conversation with generator is with Eastern Corridor. I know they presented to the board a couple of times, but asking these same questions of them who are professional developers. Look, we want something that's not water heavy, sewer heavy, but brings in, the most amount of tax income that we can get. What are your all suggestions as well? It seems right to bring them. And again, I've lost track of that conversation exactly where it's at. They've been dealing with Main Street. I get that as well, but it might be good timing for them to shift their focus back and like really do something on the Eastern Corridor, and how can we incentivize them to push them along? To
Yeah,
start.
have you been having conversations with?
They continue on all their plans. They've kind of shifted focus from the north side to the south. And the first step is to get the stream bank restored so that they can gain 50 feet more of depth in their lots. And they're getting ready to start that soon. And they have the rock delivered now. It's engineered, but that's the first step. Everybody has to wait. When you're doing river work, you gotta wait for the river to go back down. So now they can focus.
Yeah. Well, maybe we have another one of these meetings with the EBC and with Think Generator. But in the meantime, I would love to hear incentivization ideas from anybody. I know I'll throw one out there. One of the reasons this came up was I met with Ashley Stolzman, who's the former mayor of Louisville. And I said, your downtown is so much fun. How did you do that? How did you revitalize it? And she asked me, she said, well, do you want economic benefit or do you want your community happy? And I said, both. And she said, well, you can't have both. She said that Louisville subsidizes their downtown area so much that they don't see it, they don't get it back, but they do it because their community really enjoys it. And they like
Got
hanging
the
out
base to do
downtown.
it.
And they've got
have
the
a
base
Costco.
to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a
Go to
Costco.
Costco, yeah.
So, so I know it's not the same thing, and believe me, Victoria, I'm not suggesting that we do what they did, but just to say that, we can't rely on revitalization of downtown in order to carry us forward.
That's the quality of life piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brandon had his hand.
Oh, sorry, Brandon.
Oh, I was gonna just contribute to the wedding discussion with my own experience, which is I think all of my vendors, with the exception of the photographer, and I had my wedding at Lions Crest, were out of town. So they were all in Longmont, pretty much the baker, the caterer, the alcohols actually came from Denver. Everything was from out of town except for the photographer. And at least there weren't any local options. Everything was out of town. So
Yeah, and I don't know why no one has filled that niche, other than what do you do all winter?
Well,
That's the problem.
Well, and where do you live?
But
Right,
would that be, I mean,
Me?
Cassie, what you said is like, would that be a benefit? I mean, if the alcohol is coming from Denver or it's coming from a local line, aren't we getting the same tax revenue on that? That sounds like it. I don't
Yes,
think that's a game changer, but
I don't know that we are.
If it's reported.
Yeah, if it's
When a
recorded,
wedding party has liquor delivered from Longmont or Boulder, I don't think that wedding party is paying taxes. I think the tax is collected where the sale was made. And the sale was made at the liquor store. And I think the Longmont and Boulder are getting their revenue off of that liquor, I believe, unless there's something going on I'm not aware of.
well, it depends. If it's being delivered by the liquor store, then it should be reported to Lions. If the bride and groom's having their buddy pick it up and carrying it up to Lions Crest or to the farmette or whatever, then it would be at point of sale.
correct.
Well, then there's some leakage there because I don't think the average wedding couple even crosses their mind
Mhm.
that they should work with the town of Lyons to make sure that the tax is collected here, because they're paying it in Boulder and Longmont. And how we go about making that change, I don't know. It wouldn't be easy. But they're paying their taxes at the liquor store at this point.
Yeah, but again, if the liquor store delivers it to Lions, the liquor store then pays the taxes and we eventually get it back to
Because
the
it's an
state.
excise.
It's like
then.
when I bought a mattress in Boulder, I know Lions got the tax. Because they had to look up my zip code and figure it all
It
out.
was delivered here.
Yeah, it was delivered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you buy it there.
No, you buy it there, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. That's why
So
I
you want
think
the
it's really
county's
important to get that word out there. If you,
Right.
need to, if you can shop and have it delivered, get it delivered.
Yeah. It's pretty much all delivered.
I will say if had there been a hotel in Lyons, we would have spent a lot more money in Lyons. My whole wedding party, we all stayed in Longmont, right? There wasn't an option,
Make colors the biggest.
Did you have something, Jocelyn?
Yeah, I just, I wanted to kind of go back to sort of the beginning, when we were talking about sales tax collection on vendors, or excuse me, at the 3.25%, keeping the admin fee. I mean, there's a part of me that's like, as expensive as we've heard over and over and over from businesses that are here, and what can we do to incentivize? I think if we turned around and said,
Yeah.
we're going to take that 3.5% and keep it in, no longer you get to have it, we've just, that's one more thing that's
I don't
gonna
think-
hurt them.
I don't think most know they're doing it. Cassie, I don't think most know they're doing it.
That they're keeping 3.25%.
Probably not. I mean, when I enter in our sales tax, because we have to pay sales tax to the state on that we collect on electric, and then of course ours comes back to us. Yeah, so when I'm paying it, I pay the Boulder County portion, which does not allow Lions to keep a little percentage. I pay the state, I pay Lions, and then there's I think the taxing district in there. But yeah, it's all calculated for you. So I would be surprised if they realize that. I mean, but I don't know. Maybe they are. But I think, a lot of it, and I could say, when you think of every month, when we say 50% of what we got this month was local. So 50% of it is for local businesses, right? From local businesses. 50% of it is not. So you can kind of think of it that way. And sometimes it's less than 50 and sometimes it's more than 50 because we're seasonal. That was just one recommendation that's, not unheard of and very common in every, a lot of our neighboring communities, that I feel like is an opportunity to capture.
Still have them keep something reasonable. Like Cassie said, if it takes 15 or 20 minutes to do that once a month,
It's very
Mhm.
quick.
Yeah.
Very quick.
because it's all calculated for you. If you have a point of sale system, it's all done at the end of the month. But.
And it is tax, essentially. It is tax that, the purchasers, the consumers are paying.
One thing that Mayor Rogan, in terms of suggestions on incentives, unfortunately not a specific suggestion, but one of the things that's coming up for me is looking for examples of a multi-year incentive I appreciate the Louisville point to make sure that it is really competitive and we're getting, it's like worth our while in a long time where we don't want to concede. To do something of like a year 1, year 2, year 3 incentive where revenue, it could be tricky math here because of the sizes of businesses, but if revenue for that new business or growing business meets certain benchmarks in year 1, year 2, year 3, they get additional incentives for each year so make it, and incentivize them to start, but even further to incentivize them to stick around and grow to try to ensure like growing incoming revenue to the town, something like that. We're looking to some sort of examples of multi-year, like stage benchmark incentive. And again, the specifics on that, I know it's easier said than done defining the specifics on that, but I bet you there are good examples out there.
Cassie?
When I worked in Broomfield, we had lots of developer incentives that involved multi-year incentives. Now, you're right that they had the base to carry it, but some of those were incentives such as sales tax. So if you're a business that's going to bring in a decent amount of sales tax, we'll give you 50% of that sales tax or a certain percent. And I definitely would not recommend going, really high like we sometimes do with our TIF, but 50% or 40% for 10 years, then the onus is on them. It's very much like our URAs. You're only going to get the incentive back for as successful and how long you're here. But it's done with a lot of things like sales tax, property tax, rebates just for the town's portion. I'm not, involving URAs in any of this yet, but use tax, anything like that can be used. Use tax, not necessarily unless you have a multi-year residential growth or something, but can always be used as a multi-year incentive.
Yeah, I was gonna bring up, we have an urban renewal authority for the downtown. And people are getting into the program, but that does mean when their taxes increase, they're just gonna get that money back. So the town's not gonna see it, for a while, right? And it's a fairly long urban renewal authority. I think they've talked about in the past, should we have an urban renewal authority for the Eastern Corridor to get things started? I don't know mathematically if it would work out, but is that an idea that might the businesses be more likely to develop the Eastern Corridor if they knew they're getting some of their property tax back?
Well, and I think, so that has been talked about before. Do we have a separate URA for the Eastern Corridor? And the thing is that it's a timing thing, right?
Yeah.
Victoria, please correct me if I'm wrong, but the clock starts ticking.
As soon as you form it.
Yeah,
So then if it takes 5 years, then they're down to 20 years of incentive instead of 25.
So we're kind of like waiting. It's a
We're
cart
waiting.
and horse.
yeah. So do we wait for the annexations to come and then start it?
Because it would, we could probably form one in a matter of, I'll say 9 months, maybe. It would take a bit, but as long as that person was working on development plans, we could be working on it simultaneously. But if you start it too soon, for example, when we looked at this the first time out there, I think it was 2018, 17 or 18. So had we started that 6 years ago,
Yeah.
But to be able to initiate and start one, it's going to take these surveys, it's going to take notifications of neighbors, a few public hearings, but definitely not impossible. And we have the policies in place now and things like that. So I would say within 9 months, we should be able to have one up and running.
Has Paul ever asked about?
Oh, yeah, Paul has always said
Has he?
he's counting on it.
One for the Eastern Corridor?
Oh, yeah. And then the last seated board said they weren't, there was some vocal folks saying we're not going to do this. And he felt kind of slighted by that. Saying, what do you mean you're not going to do it now when we've been talking about this as an incentive? So he has always thought that we would form one when the time came, but it has gone back and forth depending on who's seated.
When is the time? What is the appropriate time to do that?
The proper time is when you have a developer who's seriously interested in getting serious for us to start it, so that while they're working on their plans, we could be forming ours.
Aaron?
So I was just going to add in particular on the Eastern Corridor, one thing to think about is, again, continuing grants for the build out of infrastructure. We've had some discussion from properties on annexing in and what's it going to take for them to get sewer and water. And the town can't pay for that. It's going to have to come from them. And what kind of development is involved in that? We got the original lift station that's right in front of our new facilities and a water pressure reducing valve location so that we are ready to build out from an EDA grant a few years ago. So again, those are going on to federal level grants, which are complicated and take some staffing. And like, we know there's been the talk of we try to reduce grants to some extent, but then seeing again another aspect of where it may be important to try to reach out and get those grants and have staffing that can handle that. If they were in place, you might have some development going. People have asked about it. If you want the few other things, just while I was, go ahead, Trustee Edding.
Yeah, so you bring up a really great point, and this is one thing I heard a lot about when we did the LPPA 5, 7, 8 years ago, that the property around us, it's a lot of small parcels. It's not one big, huge 800-pound gorilla, 500 acres or something. Which means that if you're going to put sewer out to the eastern corridor and you want the developer to pay for it, it's got to be a fairly large development for them to pay for it, or they're not going to do it. But if you have 4 or 5 small properties, they all would have to work together to fund that, to get the utilities out there, and that's really unlikely to happen. So there's no doubt, I think we should pursue all federal grants to get utilities out to the eastern corridor. I mean, we all said we're using grants to get rid of grants,
Well,
but that's fine.
But I think for one-time capital
Yeah, yeah.
expenses, perfect.
Perfect, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's the maintenance of those moving forward.
Yeah,
That's
understand.
what we have to cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the concern is again, having staff time, those grants, I've not looked into it, but I heard the EDA grant is one of the most, intensive ones to work on. So staffing to handle that when we already know staffing is low. My few other ones, just in listening to the conversations are, right, one of the big costs to commercial is commercial taxes. How do we try to work something around that? That's going to make it difficult, as we know, for anyone to move into the brick and mortar. Just my opinion that is one of the biggest reasons we don't have more than what we have, because they see what it's going to take to do that. And if they can't make the kind of revenue just to pay, the landlord has to collect the taxes. So they're waiting to look for that.
Yeah.
Not an answer, but the big concern. And then the other one to look at, we've talked a lot about just getting the conversation out there, communication with people on understanding what's involved with it, but somehow trying to express if commercial is not benefiting the residents, then why would they care, right? Why do they want to be involved there? Why do I have to build up downtown if I can go out here and just get what I need and I don't worry about it too much? So there is some with communication to me always between what commercial can provide for us. Is that going to reduce my bills? Is that going to reduce my taxes? What's the benefit for me? And trying to get that out to the community to see, yes, it could, but understanding it is a long-term game at some point, at this point in time. We don't have anything that's going to be a quick solution. Most of what we're talking about is a little bit more complicated. So those are the few things in listening to the conversation I just thought I would put out there.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Aaron.
Aaron, I'll just weigh in on that right quick, what Aaron was saying. When we started the Stone Cup, we thought we'd be open at a certain time. We had to extend our lease to the post office. That was the post office, but for those of you that weren't in town before we started. And the Barks and Dog got open. We didn't even know that there were going to be 2 coffee shops open. We lost $100,000 before we brought the Stone Cup back to break even again. Fortunately, we had the ability to do it. That would wipe some people out that started a coffee shop and lost $100,000. They would say, well, we're out of business. We have to move on. We have the staying power, but taxes, I don't mind paying income taxes because I pay it on something I make. Property taxes start from day one. Doesn't matter how much you're losing, you still pay your property taxes. And I think Aaron's point is really big. A lot of small businesses, if they have good sense at all, they've got to have a damn good business plan to even open the doors, because you're going to lose money for a while. I don't know what business doesn't for a while until you really get established. And that's what we're up against on this high property tax for commercial. Commercial taxes is roughly 4 times as much on the same assessed value. And it's really a burden for a small business. We pay $50,000 at Riverbend and we hardly have any buildings.
I talked to one building owner on the 400 block of Main Street, and he said he's paying 60,000 a year in property taxes. And there's no retail business in there. So he said, what I'm collecting in rent barely just pays my taxes, nothing's going to me.
Well,
So,
and I remember having that conversation with the previous owner of Steamboat Mountain. And that was her reason for closing, actually, was she said, you know, the rent I'm getting from the tenants above her organic grocery store was literally just enough to pay for her property tax. That's,
I miss that place.
yeah.
yeah. You know,
And then-
and we missed that business, right? They
Can we
couldn't keep up with
can we
property
rezone
taxes.
everybody ag and just make ag, you can do anything you want?
Well, I did wonder though about the live work scenario, and the county's gonna take what sort of is told to them. So we try to think of some, just thinking about, right, if we did really get this idea of live work, which does promote smaller businesses, are they residential because they're living there and this is really just an accessory use of trying to promote their life? And one option that I had just thought about for the taxing, which is really beyond us to come up with. That's the only option, right? To get rid of the tax is that it's taxed residential or agriculture and not commercial. But still doing what needs to be done legally.
I think the county's gonna tax you at a blended rate if they know that you have a business in your home. Taxes are based on usage, not zoning. And if you have a commercial use in your home, I would think that the county's gonna want some commercial tax. I don't know that for sure.
I do. I've talked to them about it and about our Main Street. And he said right now, the assessor said they send a biannual survey to folks like on our 300 and 400 block. And it is purely an honor system of what percentage of your space is residential and what percent is commercial. And thus the conflict then, when our code says you must have this much commercial, and this, you know, you have to have more commercial, it needs to be in the front where you're residential. And so it's all an honor system. But yeah, there's two different processes happening there. The town does it by zoning, the county does it by square footage.
I wonder if there's an intersection, Mayor Roder, and you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation of like what businesses we'd want to attract that would increase income, but be relevant in varying other ways for town. Is there, and again, I keep bringing up like broad questions and no answers, but like, is there maybe part of the wedding industry that we could coach new businesses to be zoned ag to reduce taxes, but also have an income structure where the town would have the taxes? I feel like we could focus in and do additional like thinking of really what business to promote that like check multiple of those boxes. And the other, just while I'm trying, the other thing that I think is interesting, just in the spirit of like brainstorming here, is like, I feel like 100% we have to address the big costs, like property income and how to support and incentivize those. But it could be interesting to create buzz around lines of like, what can we provide for incentives that is like truly local, like Lions creative flavor. So like, if you're around after year 2 of your business, we'll buy you a golf cart for your business that has your logo on that you could drive back and forth in the Eastern Corridor, right? So like, just like fun things like that, that again, are not gonna be game changers, but could, you know, just create buzz of like, huh, I've heard that Lions does extra things that no one else does.
Well, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think that, yeah, that creates a buzz and it creates a little brand, and it would help businesses attract employees, right? Because that's one of the things that we hear is you can't find anybody to hire. But if there's this kind of reputation of something like that being so, you know, being super cool and desirable, then that alone would help, I think.
Paul, the gentleman that owns part of the Eastern corridor, he did mention when he first bought it, we got the referral, it was 8, 9 years ago. He was gonna do some type of food complex, and then
Yeah.
that kind of went away. And then he switched, and he did approach the board or PCDC at one point about going into a focus on the outdoor industry.
Right.
You're like, okay, yeah, I can totally see that working here. I mean, I can completely see that working. I don't know where he is on that.
Everything shifted with
Everything shifted again.
COVID. and
COVID,
then
well, yeah.
Interest, everybody's just been a holding.
But even that, I mean, they were thinking about, outdoor accelerator, bringing in light
Yeah.
industrial, but it would be service. I don't know.
Yeah, it would be
that-
service,
That
that's right.
wouldn't solve this conversation that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I think every service would have a retail component,
Mhm.
things like we're working with Reed right now. Reed was making custom made bikes and they're really not in the right zone, so we're working with them. They'd be more appropriate out on the eastern corridor. They'd still be selling bikes and we'd get sales tax. But, yeah, so it's,
Yeah.
he wants these maker spaces to complement both our outdoor lifestyle and our artisan lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Reed makes a bike here next to Oscar's and sells it to somebody in Cleveland,
They should be,
Cleveland gets all the taxes. Or-
if it's delivered there.
Yeah.
Properly, I asked Cassie to do a little research on excise. Should like a bicycle built here but delivered there pay an excise tax?
I don't know that that's a common example. I'm not sure that, you definitely couldn't do that. I think they're more common on things like liquor and tobacco and fuel and, vehicles like that kind of
It's in
stuff.
Texas. Aaron?
Just going to mention, and Victoria happened to bring it up in that area of industry. The other concern that is somewhat of an expense is, again, we have an old town. Downtown in particular is very old, and it is expensive to try to upgrade it. But I don't know that we can step back and try to allow businesses to come in and just operate at a cheaper level when there are concerns. The fire protection district is going to have concerns. There are, again, I was going to mention a manufacturing process that is not in the greatest facility for that manufacturing process. There are big concerns that they have a hard time getting past without tens of thousands of dollars. So I don't have a great answer, but it is still, it's something to be aware of because we're talking about this incentive and I don't want it to come back and say, Aaron, stopping the process again because the building permits can't go through. And to some extent, we do have to be aware of these, restaurants who want to open up and yet they have hood systems that are 20 or 30 years old and it becomes a concern for safety. And while the live work space is a great idea, you're supposed to have fire separation between those when you start to develop that. And again, it gets to be expensive to do that building. I don't have the quick
We
solution
have
to
any
it.
votes too.
It's just to be aware of for trying to promote these things and then making sure we're also saying, but there is concerns. This is going to take a little bit of work on your part. And right, as Victoria mentioned, Administrator Simonson mentioned, it may not be the best location for your operation. Can we promote another one, which we've tried to do with manufacturing, trying to help them find the proper space in town that works well for them.
So I know I've heard floated ideas in the past about, and I can't think of the names, so you're gonna have to help me, where people have a place to come to smoke marijuana legally,
Hospitality, social club.
a social club. That's a new one, and I don't know, has Denver done one yet?
There's only one.
There's one in the whole state. There's that.
Well, and
I mean, I
we had. a
never thought I would
business owner-
actually promote that, but I mean, I'm kind of like, that's a new
We
thing
had a
that,
business owner on East Corridor who was hoping to annex and open that industry, but now that has stopped.
right. So there's that, if we're gonna brainstorm. But there's also the possibility of that corner of 66 and 36 turning into a gas station.
Yep.
Which I initially am not loving it because I think that's the entrance to our community and I think that's just big, bright and ugly. But that's decent sales tax dollars.
It's awesome sales tax dollars for the inside store. For all of the stuff people buy when they run in. It's excellent for that. Now, again, it doesn't have to be big and ugly.
Yeah, no, we can control that, yeah.
If you're willing to hold tight on design standards, you can say, this is what we want them to look like. I know we have all traveled and Kim takes pictures for me all the time of places that a Wendy's doesn't look like a Wendy's. It's a
Yeah.
nice brick building with a small sign.
Yeah.
And, there's ways to do it if you have the wherewithal to say, we're gonna require this out in this area. So, as that development moves forward, because it also involves coffee, they'll both be huge sales tax generators for us. I mean, not, it's small compared to everybody else, but for us, I could see it actually being a significant sales tax driver if it moves forward.
But I'd be really curious to know, what do people really think of that? I mean, you can't stop a business from coming in, right?
Not unless your zoning precludes it.
But right now, that sounds,
It's not, they'll bring it in as they annex, it's not
Yeah,
annexed.
So,
So you guys would hold public hearings to
Yeah.
determine that.
first of all, we gotta make sure that they just don't stay in the county and do that.
Yeah.
right, no, I
The bigger
agree.
issues, Yeah, not that.
That's our biggest threat,
Still
is them just saying, oh, let's
still
just stay in the
seated
county
there,
and Boulder
but
County lets us
they're
do it.
getting money.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what's the last part?
That's the worst case scenarios. It's
Right.
still seated on our intersection, but
Right.
the
But it's
county
not
gets the
ours.
revenue.
yeah.
But is there utilities to that property right now?
It goes near it.
That's
There it
the
is.
exact one I was talking about that
Working with
is
them
looking
on-
for grants and how do we do this? And that may be why they can't stay in the county because they don't
Yeah.
have the facilities. But again, and one, so it's a balance. Somebody who may have the ability to try to get a portion of it out there, but they can't do the whole thing. So hopefully they're still working on things out there. And we're still trying to say, here's some design ideas. How can we make this work? Trying to promote conversations between various developers. Because yes, if the one on the south side wants to also do something and the one on the north side and the other one next door all are sort of thinking about it, can they get together and say, okay, we all want this. Let's go ahead and sort of say we're willing to put in for a sewer main and a water main. Then you're not stuck with somebody just coming out 20 feet dead ends and how do you deal with that when it should really be looped around and promote continuous development of the infrastructure.
Well, and I think part of the problem is, people have to have priorities, right? Developers have priorities. And so how do we make Lions be at the top of their priority lists?
Would it be worth having a conversation with Paul if he's shown an interest in the past to see where he's at now?
Oh, I think we're kind of always in conversation with Paul off and on, but I think it would be definitely worthwhile to
Ask him for
maybe
an
have a
update.
meeting, yeah, and ask them for an update. How much has the EPC discussed the eastern environs in general?
Quite a bit, but it's been on hold a bit, I would say, in the last 6 to 9 months, but prior to that, for the last couple of years. We've had Paul and Ray come present to us a couple of times as well, so we've discussed it a fair bit.
Do any thoughts or ideas come to mind immediately? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but while you're here, I want to be able to put you on the spot. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the two things that I feel like I've already mentioned in here is, I feel like using Paul and Renee and Generator as somebody that could be a bit of a cornerstone that can help drive other things. I think that we have that opportunity here. And I know we've been using them and I've been in communication with them, but I feel like that is something that I think we could, push a lever on more. And then, as we've been talking about, finding the right incentives to develop that in a smart way. Those are the two main things that I feel like we've talked about at the EBC. I know it's not overly helpful because those aren't like specific, here's the plan moving forward, or here's the potential plan, but like further developing those two ideas.
I wonder if it would be a good discussion topic for the EBC to talk about what incentives
For
would
sure.
have helped you. There's a lot of business, you know, there's ASA and Grace.
I can-
Another thing I had was in hearing other conversations, one property we have that's out there that's not doing much for us at the time though is the CDOT space out 36. You know, where's the incentive to say, is this a property that could have something? We haven't looked at the Western corridor as much either. Not
Right.
that there's a whole lot out there, but again, I hear conversation among different people over time, and that's an area to look at. We're trying to think of everything. So that space
actually-
and that area as we go out a little bit west.
Some of you who haven't been here as long, we did meet with CDOT after the flood and tried to obtain that property for them for affordable housing. And the discussions, we had a couple meetings and then they said, we're choosing to keep it here. We want to be at below 6,000 elevation for our snow removal operations so that we're ready to just head up 36 because above 6,000 and they're already snowed in. So after some discussion back and forth with them, they weren't interested at that time. Not that it's of course not able to be revisited, but we did have some discussions with them when we were desperately looking for a site.
I would say the other thing that we've talked about the EBC and I know this is a long shot and there's complications to this, but somehow having Rocky Mountain National Park be a conversation in the Eastern Corridor. And it's not too dissimilar to, you know, Paul and Renee could be a cornerstone and develop something that draws, you know, that ripples out from there, that other folks are like, yeah, I want to be next to this thing because it is drawing in business and drawing in people and people are parking there and stopping there. A Rocky Mountain National Park Visitor Center to educate around time of entry and, you know, other
And bus up there.
and have transportation. So
Oh,
that could be,
that's.
and again, there's complications of that. They have no staff to do that. They have no real appetite to do that. Again, it's complex. It's a bit of a longer shot, but having a couple of just cornerstones that drive other things around that would, those would be huge wins.
So Rocky Mountain National Park has no desire to have kind of an outpost.
They're terrified on how to staff it. I think it's their biggest worry right now. They literally do not have staff to run their normal operations.
We had several, yeah, there was meetings with them too.
And
I wonder, when were those meetings?
Right, when Paul was still doing his plans for the outdoor
Mhm.
recreation and asking if that could maybe be a cornerstone there. So that people would pull over, they have these businesses to go to while they're here waiting for the next bus to go up. Some people might want to bus up. It's one of the few spots we have enough room for parking.
Well, maybe there's a private bus operator that might be interested, you know,
But
aside
again,
from-
it's so seasonal.
Yeah,
How do you make it work?
Rocky's not that seasonal these days. I mean,
Someone told me that.
but one of the things that, you know, it's hard to figure out what the right incentive for Rocky Mountain National Park is. Like, what do they get from doing that? They have to
Less
provide a
traffic.
whole bunch of stuff. Maybe they get less traffic, and that would be the main incentive, but then a whole bunch of folks would have to stop and bus. So it's hard to understand what we would give to that.
I agree. I think they solved the problem by the time entry system.
Yeah.
They made a lot of the problems go away. They're gonna stick to it. So I would agree. I don't know what their incentive is.
They only really need about 3 months worth of satellite. The rest of the season, Estes Park can accommodate everything. And once it gets to that point, they're not gonna want a satellite thing for more than 3 months is all that would really benefit. The park slows down. It might be active, but it's not nearly as busy.
I think so much of this comes back around to the seasonality.
yeah.
It just can't work when you don't have a customer base for 5 months. unless you can float yourself over that time. We have got to figure out an indoor or a winter activity people can do.
I see private shuttle buses stopping at the Sebring Market regularly throughout the week, and I don't know if that's a 6-month period of time. I'm not sure. I see them in the spring, I see them in the fall, I see them all summer. They're those big black vans or big black buses.
They're
stop.
probably airport shuttles going from the airport to the resort.
I feel like they're on a they're on a
I
tour.
think it's this company called Aspire, they're based in Denver, they do tours up to.
Mostly summer.
I don't know, I think you're probably right, just not do that, it's like some shoulder season, but there's probably 5 months or so that they're not very active.
Well, and Paul, that's your industry, right? The outdoor
Yeah,
industry.
for sure,
so
yeah.
Do you, I mean, do you have any like big pipe dreams about what Lions could be to the outdoor industry?
I mean, so some of Paul Renee's ideas are intriguing, like outdoor accelerators for small companies, we can figure out tax revenue. They had this idea of a destination outdoor recreation museum and interactive museum where folks could come, I think, year round to do different varying activities from just interactive museum piece, but also access to the river to do ecology and fishing and building out some bike trails and things from there. So I think some of those things could be draws for where folks would want to stop and kind of enjoy and learn about the outdoors.
Mhm. Climbing gym.
Yeah,
I used to climbing gym, that's this part. They're okay. I don't know. It's
climbing gym is a tricky one because there's great climbing gyms everywhere else, and Longmont's still about to open a new climbing gym as well. Boulder has 3. It's interesting. I feel like, potentially something that is a guide related service. Again, another reason why someone would stop and would want to be like, oh, we'll go up to Rocky with you, or we'll go biking or climbing or something with you, but it's small, that's not like a big business.
Yeah.
But it would be very cool if that was in mind somewhere. I think that's another opportunity, that's right.
The other winter industry these people had mentioned was you don't even have a small theater. So no, we don't have a small theater. That's something people tend to do in the winter.
theaters are struggling right now.
I know.
Big time. If it wasn't for these last 2 movies that came out, they're taking bankruptcy and everything out there. I don't think anybody's gonna invest in much.
Well, if we're gonna, but if we're gonna brainstorm just ideas, that's indoor things.
All right, what can we get the locals to do in the winter, maybe? I know that just a fitness center is not going to pay for itself. We can't do a pool type thing, but something in that realm where we could get the locals that could help. Again, not a good answer, but just somewhere if there was something that locals
Music
would
in the
come do.
Wildflower Theater is probably the lowest hanging fruit. If you can convince Craig to have those every weekend and bring in 300 or 400 people and have live music, they can sell those things out. He's got the artist connections. And if we had a hotel for him to stay in and stay here and eat dinner.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to look at incentivizing somehow that, the facility's there, it sits empty most of the time. He's got the connections. Work with him.
Yeah, I was gonna also suggest, is there an appetite for a third 3-day festival?
A third one, I'm sorry.
3-day festival in September, Jazz
Well, I
Festival,
think-
whatnot. I don't know.
Yeah, so I reached out to Zach before Rocky Grass just to say is everything going okay? And he said, yeah, it's great. Working with staff is great. And when the festivals are over, we want to sit down and talk about some stuff. So that could be a good opportunity.
That's a possibility for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know Grace sits on the EDC, and this summer, this year, they're not planning the Mabon Festival, which was a September event,
Mhm.
right? They tried that for a couple of years.
2-day.
They are doing Elephant Revival the week after.
They're doing
the first, which should hopefully will be a sellout crowd. But but the theater, in the off months, they felt it works with the right artists.
Yeah.
The music.
Music, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember us going to some of those
He did have those at one point.
You're just looking for something to do because it's dark at 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you don't want to drive very far.
And you don't want to drive.
You don't want to go very far, and it's convenient for locals, and there'll be a lot of people gonna, our farm dinners on Wednesday nights are mostly Denver people.
Yeah.
And they go home at 9:30 at night and drive back to Denver, and we have a waiting list for all of them. And we're gonna bump the price up, they're currently around $130 a piece, that doesn't include your wine, people come to those things. It collects sales tax, we don't make much money on it, we're kind of showcasing different caterers and different farmers.
I know.
But we don't have to make money on everything we do. It creates jobs, it creates sales tax, it helps our staff earn more money. So there are things like that that can be done more possibly, but
I'm curious, what is our camping situation during the winters?
We do a great question. There's so tent camping ends on October 15th. We do have RV camping from year round. And this past year it was really slow. And again, we weren't sure why, like, was it rate related or not? Whereas I feel like in certainly 2020, because nobody laughed, nobody all shut down. But 2021 and 2022 were reasonable winters, you know, something at 65% occupancy in winter time, but last winter was probably closer to.
And summer's totally booked.
Yeah.
And at the EBC, I think we've talked a little bit about like, kind of escape camper van, you know, more off season, because then they have the, you know, the heated unit or sprinter vans, you know, coming up to, but again, I don't think it's enough because there's 15 spots total.
Now, that's another thing we hear about is, are we willing to consider any RV parking at Bone in the summer? It is a very underutilized park.
It sure is.
And it's set up for it. I mean, it's not set up for sewer and water, but we could find out what the cost would be to do that. If you kept it out from behind Lions Valley Village and instead put it the row of parking nearest the river, kind of up along the river.
I mean, dry camping is,
Well, not even the dry, I'm talking real camping, just like over at Laverne. I mean, you could probably get another 10 cents.
That parking lot is never full.
It
I've
is never-
never seen it full, and we have a
Only
Second
during-
Avenue lot.
but you're
During
talking about
large
putting in
events,
the
yeah.
infrastructure for
Right.
water and sewer.
one of the main,
Well, no, I mean, I'm just. I think we could save money and not bother with doing water sewer. There's a bathroom and let them be there and make reservations but it's strictly dry camping.
one of the main goals of the 2000 comp plan, I was very involved in that. It was right after the Great Recession. We were very business minded. It's like, how do we create revenue? Because the economy was in the dumps, of course. That was a big topic. It's like, what do we do to get our parks off using 1/3 of our sales tax revenue? Like, how do we design our parks so that we don't have to subsidize them? And clearly camping is the big profit center in the parks. We're still using, we're subsidizing our parks to the extent of $500,000 a year. And they're tying up a whole bunch of parking spaces downtown that businesses aren't going to be able to use. We failed to accomplish that goal of the comp plan, but we talked a lot about, let's get these parks to break even. Well, if we could bring that RV thing back in and now say, listen, we didn't do enough RV, we didn't do enough camping with our original plan. Let's work on correcting that. We missed it the first time, even though it was in the comp plan. I think that's the low hanging fruit. The land is there. The demand is there. If you go, I talked to the campground host. He said, oh yeah, we could easily fill twice as many RV spaces in the summer. And it's good revenue. And they spend money downtown. They go to the
That's
grocery
right.
store. They go to the coffee shops. That's a real positive thing to put RVs wherever you can in this park.
Right, well, we have just a couple of minutes left. So anybody have any final thoughts? Aaron?
Cassie, did you have anything else?
No, I didn't have anything. I wasn't super prepared for a big revenue discussion tonight, so it will come with budget though.
Sorry, don't mean to put you in the spot either, but
it's
we always
okay.
love hearing your thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We'll definitely get really, dive deep and look at some other things if we can for budget.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
I just want to say that, you know, I mentioned at the beginning, in my mind, I'd like to see like a 30 to 40%, you know, growth in revenue in today's dollars. So we're talking, I don't know, Cassie, are we talking $500,000 or something? I mean, we're at about a $2 million budget.
Yeah, about two.
Yeah, okay. So if we grew it by 25%, that would be $500,000. So anything that we can find that's 50,000 or more, it's an actionable thing. And we just need 10 of those. If RV is one of them, maybe a hotel would be a third concert. I don't know. I mean, just if we start, if we make a list of 10, $50,000 things, maybe 5 years from now, in today's dollars, we could be up by $500,000.
Yeah.
And we've already accomplished a couple of those with the STR, you know, the lodging tax increase and the local marijuana. Those were two, you know, good chunks. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think you're right. And that was my point earlier, is we are taking little bites. We're not going to get one giant, you know, until or if the hotel comes. You know, we're not going to get one big chunk. It's going to have to be a bunch of small things, but we're going to have to be willing to take action on some of them.
And I think the comment Aaron brought up a good point is how you're going to sell this. We're trying to not raise people's property taxes.
Yeah.
That's our goal here.
Well, and when we get into detail with more budgeting, I've asked Cassie to be sure and present the current different tax rates of the other entities in the county that all of our tax dollars are going to. It's quite shocking.
Yeah.
It's quite shocking that the town is,
Very small portion goes to Lions.
I mean, the fire district and library, they're.
Yeah.
It is kind of shocking. So I want to make sure we address that, when we look at it. And I also want to have a conversation about, is there anything more we can do with Boulder County to say, all of us are paying Boulder County taxes. What are we getting?
Yeah.
What are we getting in Lions when, I'm gonna throw this out there. The sheriff is saying the 2024 operating budget is gonna go up $125,000 in 24, and to expect it again in 25. $250,000 to us.
Based on what?
Looking into that, but I mean, those kinds of numbers are terrifying. I mean, we can't make, we're hardly getting by, and I look at some of these things like enforcement of sales tax and enforcement of different things. You gotta have the basic infrastructure of people who can follow through on this to make it right, like STRs and things like that. So 125,000, we're gonna have to figure out an operating next year.
Yeah, sorry to drop that bomb at the end of the workshop.
No, it's just something to think about, though, that, I mean, the costs are going up.
One thing you said, when we pay property taxes, a lot of it goes to the fire district, the school district.
Yes,
If we were to raise property taxes, it's a mill levy that we can raise, right? And
Yes.
so it would be then increasing all of the revenue to those other places as well, or can we pinpoint it just to us?
no, it's just ours.
Okay, all right.
See, and that's the thing, we always hold back, and they've gotten to the taxpayers first.
Oh,
Or
yeah,
they
so they
sold,
beat us as much. Yeah.
or they sell it as a regional thing.
Yeah.
Where the town folks we already had fire protection, we have fire hydrants, we had our volunteer crew, all that. So like when that last one gets approved, it helps outside of town, but all of us. Yeah, and so those kinds of things, not a bad, I mean, we all want that, I get it, but I mean, it does, we kind of pay it. It's like when I was asking the sheriff about what do we need to cover here that we're not already getting, and he said, you've never paid for a detective. Ever in Lions, and I'm like, well, don't our Boulder County dollars go for the very occasional detective that we might need? And he's like, we're the only community who does it. And so, we'll get into that, but
Yeah, that's for another time.
yeah, but just when we're talking those kinds of numbers, that's big. Something's gonna have to get cut in the rest of the operating budget. Unless you increase revenue.
What are we doing actionable out of this? I mean, I'm really interested in what Greg says. Little things bring in 50,000. What stops us? What are the obstacles to bringing full RV into Bone? I mean, that just seems like a low hanging fruit, no brainer. as long as you're moving it away from the Lions Valley Park. What other actionable items can we be looking at in our short time remaining that we could actually get done or get initiated outside of that?
I would love to see a list.
A list.
Maybe staff could work on a list.
Of items
Based
to
of
generate
items
additional
that could-
revenue.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
we,
if you have
50,000
any of
before.
the EDC, just share those and we'll put them together.
we'll put it on an
I
agenda
mean,
and decide. what
additional,
forward, right?
additional events that,
If we want to talk with Greg.
yeah.
Yeah,
And then I have asked Paul to come in and give an update
yeah.
Yeah.
on his project.
And then why
And
don't we
those-
come up with something to present to Craig? Wildflower, for the Wildflower Pavilion.
That should be on the
Talk
list.
to Craig, talk to Zach, talk to Zach.
Yeah, they may
Don't
already,
talk to Craig.
yeah, they may already have ideas, but I think maybe a short workshop with
Yeah,
them.
and we already reached out and said after festival, we'd like to meet.
Yeah,
So we'll firm that up.
okay.
And put something out to the public, create some sort of a contest to the public. What can we do? What business do you want to see? Let's figure out some way to get the public kind of interested in weighing in. Now, what can we do as a community to keep our property taxes from going up? What would you like to see? What are you willing to accept?
Yeah.
To keep your property taxes from going up? Because some things people say, well, we don't want that unless you're gonna have an expense. And then they say, well, then there's a price for everything. Nothing's free.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
what are you willing to accept to have more revenue?
All great ideas, everybody. I really appreciate the conversation, appreciate the question of, okay, now what do we do next? We're gonna stop the workshop so we can take a break before we start our regular meeting, but appreciate you all coming. Mike, thank you for your input. Paul, thank you very much. Cassie, thanks, as always. And so we'll take a break. We'll take 10 minutes before we start our regular meeting.
That was good.
like beans and eggs.
Yeah. I'm glad that I never have to use the gavel. Okay, I will call the Monday, August 7th, 2023 Lions Board of Trustees meeting to order. Can we please have the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Rogan,
Present?
Mayor Pro Tem Farrell,
Present.
Trustee Elson, Trustee Dottie,
Present.
Trustee Edding,
Present.
Trustee Delman,
Present.
and Trustee Williams.
President.
Thank you. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll wait. It'll be over in a second. Thank you. We must acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land on which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. We also recognize the 48 contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to the lands that make up the state of Colorado. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Let's take a reflective moment of silence. All right, and gratitude for the sirens working.
It's true.
Yeah. Okay, now's the time for audience business. Come on up, your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Board of Trustees, Gil Sparks, 2169 Apple Valley Road.
I saw your seat posture.
Want me to stop now?
No, please go ahead. That doesn't, you can reclaim your time.
I'll start you over.
No worries, I won't take that long.
Okay.
I'm here tonight on behalf of Lions Community Foundation and Lions Emergency and Assistance Fund to let you know that we're having our 3rd annual Hoot Nanny on August 27th at Riverbend. And we would hope that you all would participate with your family and friends. Last year, we estimated we had a neighborhood of 400 to 500 folks come to the event. We're hoping to exceed that this year. We will have the annual duck race. We will have Mayama dancing there. We will have a renowned band. I can't pull the name up right now, I'm sorry. And we'll have silent auction, and we've been gathering items for the silent auction for a while now. We still have time if anybody has something they want to put in the silent auction. We're gathering until Friday. So just let me know, but my main thing is to invite you all to come on down and have a good family-friendly community time with us. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a fun event. Anyone else in the room? No. Anyone online? I don't see anyone. Okay, we'll close audience business and move into staff reports. Boulder County Sheriff report. Nice to see you, Sergeant.
Hello, how are you guys all doing? Good. Not a whole lot, so we had the Rocky Grass a couple weekends ago and everything was really good. Obviously, the typical parking complaints and things like that, but nothing major happened. This weekend's the Folk Festival. And then I heard today from our former DC, Phil West, who's part of the Historical Society. So he's coming up next week with his group to check out the substation and start that project. So just to do the history of the Lions law enforcement. So that'll be pretty cool. So I'm pretty sure they decked out our headquarters and all the display cases and stuff like that. So they do a good job. Looking forward to that. School starting up next week already.
Week after.
Is it 16th?
Sorry, I'm not ready for it to be.
Came quick, summer's always good.
Or is it?
That is next.
Yeah.
That is
Oh,
next.
yay.
Sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
So with that coming is Mitch, Deputy Roseborough always does it's been a tradition, but a community barbecue for the first game, Lions home game, which is the 25th of August, yes.
Okay.
Still working out the details, but I'm seeing if we can kind of do a makeup national night out for that.
Oh,
The
great.
problem is the school charges $5 for students, which I didn't know the schools charge students to go to athletic games, but and non-students $6. So I don't want to invite people, then make them pay. So I'm gonna talk and see what we can do for that, but at the very least, we'll have the barbecue still. And that's open to the whole community. And Mitch is working on a band and like the Coloradans and see what else we can bring. So just for some stats, so there's been the graffiti cases have kind of picked up in town. I'm sure everyone has seen and heard that. Since 2021, there's been like 32 reported cases. And then since I think it was 2 weekends ago during Rocky Grass, the whole town pretty much got it. It's the same person. I have 12 other cases linked to that person. So when we catch them, that's not gonna be good for them. So it's been 15 already this year. I mean, the stuff this weekend or the last couple of weeks is all under one case because it's the same person, but it's quite a bit. Let's see. For tickets, we're just under 400 tickets this year, which is like up 200 from this time last year, which is pretty good. We had 89 in July. And then for calls this year, we have so far 1,640, which is again up just over 400 from this time last year. Which is mostly more traffic and then some other stuff that's kind of gone up, like foot patrols in the parks, domestic violence cases, things like that. I guess one more I can give you, but tracking to beat what we had last year, total calls, which was just over 2,200. So for the block cameras, so the weekend of Rocky Grass was our busiest weekend. We had just over 43,400 cars coming and going from town on Saturday and Sunday. So it's quite the jump from 30, just the high 30. So over the last 30 days, there's been just about 470,000 cars in and out of town. So and that counts each day counts one car once. So that's not like, one car 100 times one day. That's about it. Is there any questions for me?
Any questions for Sergeant Sears? Yeah.
Yeah,
Trustee
I
Duffy.
have a question and a comment, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So I have a question around support for park hosts, because I was speaking to the park hosts the other night at Laverne Johnson Park, and we were talking about the dawn to dusk. Actually, they had come by at about 7:45 to let me know they're closing at 8, and then we talked about the dawn to dusk, the new ordinance, and they brought up graffiti, and they said, it's so important that we are closed by the time it gets dark, because that's when youth come in and that's when they want to party, and that's when we have the most cases for graffiti. And I asked them what kind of support they have, because we are without a code compliance officer, and I'm not sure what the sheriff's office does to support park hosts in after hours, when there's like groups of kids who aren't really supposed to be in the park. I'm not sure.
So yeah, they are supposed to call if I asked them not to engage or go handle something they don't feel comfortable doing because they live there and I want to keep them safe. So a lot of times I'll just call our dispatch and ask for a deputy to come. I know I wasn't able to make that meeting when you guys, I think, had the second hearing for the ordinance. So I'm not sure, I haven't heard if that was passed or not.
It was.
Oh, good, because I don't know if you got my memo I wrote up. That was one of the reasons was graffiti and like really after dark in the parks, like nothing good happens. So, and not just for, the community, but also the park house too. It's just not safe for them. So that's good news, and I'll make sure that is passed to the deputies. But yeah, if it's any issues in the park like that, and deputies know they'll go, and if they're still there, then 9 times out of 10 they'll probably get a summons. It just depends on the circumstances. But yeah.
apparently it really helps when they go around and actually close the toilets. If they close the public restrooms, then I don't understand.
Yeah.
Then people get the idea they need to leave. But I just heard there was an issue with, groups of teenagers coming through, and I wasn't sure if that was related to graffiti. The comment I wanted to make was about the National Night Out coinciding with the football game. I think that's a great way to bring it back. And I don't know if you've ever been to one of these football games, but when you pay to get in, it's actually at the chain link fence right beside the track where the game is taking place. So actually that whole parking lot and the McConnell Drive there, that's totally open to the public.
Oh, so just do it out, because we usually do it, because I was there the last few years, and they do it inside the ground, so.
Yeah.
And they start at, interesting, around 4:30, which that was kind of early for, families, but then the game starts at 7. So I just was gonna talk with Mitch and kind of get his ideas in the school, and, because it's their property, so they gotta make sure they're okay with that, but unfortunately, there's no official makeup, because it's just with school starting and everything else, too much going on, too many people involved.
I
So.
think it'd be great if you could do it in the
Yeah.
parking lot, a few of your vehicles and tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause a lot of little people and families go
Yeah.
to that, so they're gonna get exposure
Yeah.
outside before they pay. the money.
Yeah, and it'll help boost the people coming to watch the games too, probably if they're already there, so.
Yeah.
So we have 400, 200 hamburgers and 200 hot dogs, so,
Well, let's use them.
yeah, so they're in the freezer right now, so.
Well, I mean, usually that's what they serve at the community barbecue, so maybe there's a way there to, join forces.
And the booster club pays for that, so it's like, well, sheriff's office already paid for it, so as long as they're okay with it, we'll just, might as well use it, so.
Right.
They just wanted to save it for other events, so,
Perfect.
yeah, put something together,
Well, we hope to see you there.
I'll be there.
Any other questions for Sergeant Sears? I have a question about the graffiti. Do you believe it's gang related?
I don't think so. I think it's just, this individual or individuals is changing, like they're like, I don't want to give out too much, but I don't think it's gang related.
Mhm.
It's not like any of the typical like, gang, like Longmont gets, their initials or, things like that, so.
It's the same, this spree though was the same symbol.
Mhm.
It's a very small, fine paint.
Yeah, it's like almost like a thick Sharpie marker, but it's
Yeah.
almost like, I'm not sure what kind of pen or.
But it is
It drips.
tagged.
Okay. Yes.
Can I just make one more suggestion or comment regarding graffiti? So I saw something really cool in Vienna this summer, actually, where they have a dedicated public space, like they
Yep.
dedicated a wall
Yep.
where graffiti is allowed.
Yep.
And anybody, and I don't know if maybe that would turn things around, but I feel like this is an ongoing issue.
Yeah.
And maybe we want to think about, is there a space that we could dedicate just to that? And then it's like, this is where you can come in.
Yeah, we talked about that, and I know it's been brought up in the past too, it's just where is a space for that.
Yeah.
It's raining. I wonder if the Arts and Humanities Commission could think about that.
Well, we have a meeting, so, okay. Okay, thank you very much. Stay safe, stay dry out there.
Yes, all right, take care, have a good.
Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, administrators report, please.
Thank you. I wanted to let folks know that the housing assessment, the IHOP, if you recall, has kicked off. I did put a little postcard in front of each of you,
Mhm.
that has the website on the front and back. And we can get you more of those if you're going to meetings and want to take some. They set up, Bohannon Houston set up at the last concert. Very pleased with our community participation. So that was good. And now it's time to start trying to get some input on it. Where do people feel it's appropriate for housing in town? Where is it appropriate for density or redevelopment, those sorts of things. So there's a project website and an interactive map to start staying in touch with that. And please, if you want a separate presentation or something to one of your boards or commissions, or you're going to something else, large HOA meeting, something, let us know. David Kimmett is the staff liaison to this, and we can help out. But that has kicked off with the goal to finish this up. I think their goal is the end of October, adopt it November, be done by the end of before the end of the budget year. Rocky Grass at Laverne Johnson had approximately 800 campers. Everything went fairly, well. No significant concerns. So now we're gearing up for Folks Festival this weekend. This weekend. Yeah, it is. We're a week jump past. And so not expecting any issues there, but it will have limited access to locals to only be walk-in traffic during that time it is being leased. We have also the Broadway Road Improvements Project has started and working now with the business owners to start moving some of the traditional traffic along there. And so that we can get started on narrowing the travel lanes, adding the parallel parking, sidewalks, curb extensions, and the multimodal trail on the south side. So looking forward to that getting started. I know there were folks in the Lions Valley Park neighborhood concerned when the electric lines went up across Carter Drive area. Those are now being removed. We told people those were temporary, they were, and now those overhead lines will be removed and everything will be underground out there. So it's nice to see that go away. Venus de Miles, August 26th, that's a Saturday. They would like to use Bone Park again as they did last year and have their start on 2nd Avenue Bridge. So we are planning for that. Artisan Market reschedule from this summer when we had, I believe it was a downpour, that will be on September 9th. So that is going to be a very busy weekend in town. September 9th for the Artisan Market, the 10th and 11th for flood commemoration events, which I'll let Trustee Daddy tell you about. This year, as we talked about, we put out a notice about trying to get a little more budget input just from general public. That got posted and literally within 24 hours, at least 4 or 5 people had given input.
Excellent.
So that was
Excellent
neat.
work. Yeah.
So we'll continue to try to get the message out on that as we get more into the weeds with you guys. Maybe we'll start asking a few more survey questions like this or that, or is this, starting to get a little more interaction there. Other than that, we are starting to work with the museum. As you know, we have a 3-way arrangement between St. Vrain School District and the town and the Historic Society. We're starting to work on some of their budget needs that they are anticipating here in this next year. Let's see what else. There's in your packet was the update and the overview of how the goat mowers went this year. If there is an interest in continuing that in the budget next year, we are going to take a look at having the goats go to Stone Canyon open space and Eagle Canyon open space. So those are the next 2 that we have on our radar for the most appropriate for the goats. And then there's also the board had asked for a Broncos funding update. That's also included in your packet. I don't plan to get into details unless someone has questions. And I think that's most of what is happening this 2 weeks.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions for Administrator Simonson?
Yes, please. Do we have a workshop date set aside yet for the budget? And then last year we kind of spent
Yeah,
a
we
day
have,
doing that.
Cassie has put together a full budget calendar.
Okay,
I can make sure that you all get that.
Yeah, thank you for asking.
yeah, because I want to,
Yeah, because I need to know that like tonight.
I have it. I can make you copies before you go.
great. So there was that question, and then do we get this Broncos funding every year?
No, one time.
It's a one-time thing.
One time.
So I can't remember. Is this on the agenda for us to discuss
No, this
So
is,
now we
you
need to-
handed it, it was only 16,000, you handed it over to Parks and Rec and staff to look at the best way to spend
I
it.
just wanted to bring up one concern. I thought I heard that the flag football group was hoping to get some jerseys. I don't know if anybody ever reached out from
I can,
that group or not, if, or maybe it was the junior high school team or something. Somebody was looking for, I thought, football jerseys.
we may have taken care of that in our own budget this year,
Okay,
but I will follow up with Lisa.
okay, so I just wanted to throw that one out there because it seems to be in the back of my mind.
It's jerseys for one of the groups.
It's for one of the groups, but it wanted to say. It may have been if there's, I don't know if there's a junior varsity. So it might, yeah, it may have been a flag football team that's through. I don't know, okay.
Anything else?
And actually, you know who would know? It was Trustee Elson,
Okay.
son, I think was part of it or something
That
like
sounds
that.
like the tackle junior high group.
Maybe so. Okay, I'm
Okay.
done, thank you.
Other questions? I have one question that just occurred to me when Sergeant Sears was giving his report is, where are we with moving on to collections for unpaid violations?
Yeah, we're working on drafting the RFP and, Judge Brown has sent over some background information. I think it's BC Collections out of Longmont. She didn't have any other, but it seems to be that's the one who most areas are using, but we've still got to get it out for RFP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that'll be good to get that done. Well, great work on the goats. Commissioner Lichman asked me a couple weeks ago if I had any information about goats as the county looks at their weed mitigation planning. So I sent her a link to that report so she could kind of see what we're doing and the great work that they do. So it's great to have those photographs. Yeah, okay, great. All right, legal update.
Thank you so much, Mayor Rogan. A couple, good updates for this month. First, concerning the Honeywell matter. The settlement obligations are complete at this point. And so consequently, we filed and were granted a motion to dismiss in the arbitration. And stipulations for dismissal from the federal and state courts were also filed. Those haven't been granted, of course, but because they were signed by all parties, they will be granted as a matter of course whenever the courts get around to it. So, very, very soon we'll be able to put the Honeywell matter completely behind us once those federal and state court dismissals come through. So that's the first update. The second update concerns the Yoder matter, and Ms. Yoder did complete all the necessary nuisance abatement activities that we required. And so we filed a motion to dismiss in the municipal court case as well. So that one is also, at least under the nuisance that we filed, behind us as well. So two good updates on wrapping up two very long matters before the town.
Great, thank you so much.
Of course.
Any questions for Attorney Devon?
Could I?
Yes.
I would just like to follow up on the wastewater discussion. The team of experts involved in this have met and they're going to do a final walkthrough this week of the plant and bring back to the board, hopefully at your next meeting, the list of priority projects that they think you should focus on. So hopefully that'll be your next meeting.
Hopefully.
That's great. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, moving right along, we have no ordinances or public hearings tonight. So we will move to consent agenda. Best guess, will you please read that into the record?
Yes, item 1 is resolution 2023-52, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, dissolving the Citizens Budget Advisory Commission. Item 2 is resolution 2023-53, a resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a professional services agreement with Consor for a sidewalk assessment. Item 3 are the July 17th, 2023 regular Board of Trustees meeting minutes, and item 4 are the August accounts payable.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I motion to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Anything anyone would like to remove from consent tonight? Okay, I'll call for the vote.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, everybody. Moving right along, boards and commissions. It is my pleasure to appoint Rhonda Vanden Boss, and I really hope I really hope I pronounced that correctly, to the Housing and Human Services Commission. She will be a terrific addition.
Yay.
So glad. And then, good evening, we have an update from the Lions Arts and Humanities Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Rogan and trustees. So my name is Claudia Paterno and I'm the Chair of the Lions Arts and Humanities Commission. So just a quick update on what we have going on. There's a lot of great things happening. You haven't been through Laverne Johnson Park recently, as the Ute sculpture is now erected over by the ice skating rink. It happened really fast. We spoke to Raul Vasquez and he moved right along on it. It's moss rock plinth and our beautiful Georgia stone with these sculptures on top. So we are like all of a sudden that project's coming right along. David Kimmett's been working with the Southern Youth Intertribal Council and our language has finally been approved. So that's exciting. Priscilla Cohen and I have been kind of moving that along. So that will, we hope to have an unveiling, we haven't decided on a date, but maybe this fall, like October or November.
Wonderful.
Yes, so yeah, thank you. It's beautiful. It looks really nice in the spot we've chosen. So I know a bronze plaque will come with the donors on it as well as the name of the artist, Orlin Joe. So, and then next to it, we're doing like an interpretive sign where we'll have the language that was approved by suit next to it, speaking of the Trail of Treaties and what the space once entailed. So that's super exciting. And our creative outlets program is just moving along. Actually, this week we just finished the utility box right by the post office.
I saw it.
Yeah, it's fun, like flying letters. So that's that looks really flying letters from Lions. I love letters. So that's that looks nice. So that's taken care of. So we just do 2 of those a year. So we'll be doing another one starting this next 6 months. Our Hearts of Lions program is moving right along with sculptures that we place all over town. So you can probably see them coming on Highway 36 and here and there. Most recent development with that is Melinda Wonder, who's been responsible for all the sculptures. She just took a position contracting for the town as a sculpture curator. So she's no longer an LHC member and she's doing that because it was just so much responsibility and so many emails and so much time. So that's exciting to have her committed to the sculptures. So that's exciting. At the library, we have our, we have our ongoing tandem art shows here. We have fun, whimsical town artwork with a few Lions flood pieces. And then over at the library, we have Christine Smock's artwork, Birdie's Eye View. So if you haven't had a chance to come by and see that, it looks really nice. She's super talented. Our Laverne sculpture is moving right along. So I'm not sure if you guys saw the mock-up that they did. So the artist is starting to work on that. And we're still raising funds for that project. But I do think we're kind of honing in on right over here across the street on that corner spot. So I think that's a super spot right by the flat wagon. And then hopefully we'll be able to get a little irrigation in there to help with the garden. So I think it's a great spot. She'll be looking over Town Hall and Laverne Johnson Park. And yeah, I think that's a great place for her to land. And then lastly, I kind of wanted to present to the DOT regarding continuing Android Jones mural. So it's a fantastic here on the west wall, and you met with Android yesterday or just last week about continuing the mural onto this north wall. He is up for doing it and incorporating maybe any animals that might have been left off onto this wall, from yellowtail, swallowtails and deer and maybe a blue heron and a bear. So he's up for doing it. The cost to us would be $13,000. We did just recently get a $5,000 check from Cemex to go to this project. So kind of asking the DOT what they might think about continuing this mural to the north wall. And it would probably be something that would, we would start fundraising for, because we still have another $8,000 to raise money for. So fundraising and then hopefully, have it done in 2024 at some point. But Android was up for doing it, so. Any thoughts on that?
Well, it's just about budget season,
Okay.
so yeah.
We'll put
So
it
the
in.
timing is good
Mhm.
for you to make that ask. So we're, I don't think we're gonna decide on it tonight.
Tonight, okay,
Yeah,
yeah, but that's great. So we'll work on that as tomorrow we'll work on our budget. So-
But they've already given the nod, they were comfortable with the north side.
Okay, the north side. Okay, great. All right, so we'll put you in. Thank you. Any questions? We've been busy.
I am curious a little bit more about the creative outlets, like,
Creative Outlets Program?
yes, where is that at the moment in terms
Well,
of?
we need to actually find another outlet box to paint. We have a couple.
I had a request.
I'm sorry, that was not what I meant.
Oh,
But my-
I don't go there.
Creative district. The creative district, that's what I'm
Oh.
thinking of. Sorry.
Electric box, no, creative, yeah, the creative district, so, Erin Donnelly's now, the director on that. And,
Yes.
That's actually a really great question, I feel like she's kind of working alongside of us, but I'm not even sure if we'll necessarily budget money for that program with the LAHC program. Okay, we will. She's
No,
not-
I'm
I
just,
don't know, you're gonna
we'll talk
nod,
about it.
yeah, I wasn't really sure, 'cause I was looking for a budget from last year, that's actually a good question.
I think, and Victoria, please correct me if I'm wrong, they're a 501c3. So they're the creative district.
Creative Arts District.
I haven't seen that yet.
Oh,
I know that was their plan.
that was their plan.
Yes, maybe
So
they haven't. reached that
maybe we should get
status
an
yet.
update from them. How about,
From Erin.
let's
That's
get an
a good
update
plan.
from Erin.
Yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're still looking for electrical boxes.
Yes.
So, I had a request.
Oh, yeah.
There's an electrical box on the corner of Third and Seward where it turns into Long's Peak.
Yes, but the bulk of it's their residents, right? in that
Yes.
corner. Yes. Because that's a new box and I don't know if they love it necessarily, right, like there, but it's there, so maybe we should paint it. and
They would
make
be
it-
open to it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And then if you ever have a really bigger project, there is a lift station that sits at McConnell.
Yeah.
Right at the
yes.
Highland
Yes.
Dam that is in pretty
Oh,
rough shape.
would that count as two boxes?
I don't know, but that would,
Yeah,
yes,
to
that's a good
verify,
size one.
Longmont, one of them is Longmont.
Okay.
No, our lift
They're-
station.
Right, but Longmont Power supplies backup power at McConnell.
Mhm.
One box is Lions Power and one box is Lions, so we just want to make sure if you do
Oh, I'm talking
Longmont,
about our lift station.
oh, just the whole box itself, not the transformers there. Got it.
But that one's big, so it'd be like
Yeah,
That, yeah.
5 feet, I mean, much bigger than.
cool. Bigger palette, I mean, a bigger, yeah, canvas.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you
think
for bringing
it's
that.
fiberglass though and not metal.
And not metal.
Okay, well, let's investigate.
We'll check it out.
We'll check it out.
Okay.
Other questions for Chair Paterno?
I'd just like to offer my congratulations for a job well done.
Well, thank you, Tanya.
I can see you've been working really hard. There's a lot happening.
Yeah, it's a great commission. Lots of people doing lots of things.
And so as of now, we could literally walk over to Laverne Johnson Park and see this new marker.
Yeah,
It's not
right.
complete, but it's.
Yeah.
But we can see the
The
sculpture.
plinth and the sculptures safely on top. Yeah, and the bronze plaque is being ordered. So
And remind me again where it's located in the park?
it's right as you're walking in, it's like right in front of where the ice skating ring. is.
Oh, there. Got
To
it.
the left of the little, ice skating ring.
Got it.
Sculpture. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, so we'll move on to general business and you're welcome to stay.
I'm gonna stay.
You might get recruited.
Okay, our first item of general business is resolution 2023-54. A resolution of the town of Lyons, Colorado, approving a reimbursement letter with Highland Ditch Company. Hello, would you like to give the staff report?
So in order to start working with Highlanders on the trail crossing, they need to review plans and we have to work out a crossing agreement, even though the land is owned by the town, the water rights are theirs, and so we have to have a crossing agreement. And so they require us to sign this reimbursement letter and pay a fee, agreeing to pay for their fees.
So the fee for the letter does not go towards any future fees from them. That's just for signing it, getting the letter. Normally they, in the past, when we've done a reimbursement letter, it's only been good for like a month. So I did negotiate asking if we could at least have it good for a year. So they did say it would be good for a year. And then, I asked for an estimate of their costs to review plans and do the crossing agreement, and they didn't feel like they could give us an estimate. And so I asked them if we could do not to exceed amount. We went back and forth with it and they agreed to the 20,000. And then if they reach that at some point, then they'll stop incurring fees and write to the town, and then we'll discuss whether we'll set another agreed to amount or how to move forward. So, but until we have this, like, we can't work with them on the trail stuff at this point. So this is something that's necessary.
Questions?
I did. So, let me see if I can get to them. And it's not as much as I have a question because I had sent you an email, that attorney has seen, as well as, town administrator Simonson and Mayor Rogan. So I'm gonna ask, I guess I just want to state what I thought I wanted to clarify, and then I can go into it after we agree to vote on this. It's 2,750, not 3,750. Okay, super. I think part of my concern was that the whereas stated as 20,000 for reimbursement costs incurred by Highland Ditch Company, that it didn't necessarily correlate with a date. And that was, so for example, the fee is through, technically it could be through August of next year. But this 20,000 was only as a matter of, as we get to that amount. Will they be communicating with you through the process to see, or like where we are in that process?
I think we'll have to track. I do actually have a budget for every project, and I track every expense that's coming in and like each contract. So if I start seeing we're getting up there towards our 20, okay, I'll definitely reach out to them and say, hey, it looks like we're getting close. Let's talk about this, and how much more do you think you guys have to go to get this process finished? So it'll probably be on our end more to track, and I do track every single invoice that comes in for projects.
Okay. So that's good. One of the things that I was hoping to get from this was that it was not in this particular resolution, it didn't mention the fees. So I want to make a motion to approve this. But then I had Tracy help me come up with some kind of a rewritten. So we'll seek advice from council after I make a motion to approve. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I have a one whereas clause addition, which would help satisfy your concerns, but I think first we need to get the motion the second.
Okay,
We'll get through the questions and then.
there we go.
get
So
there.
if there are no questions, then
Are
I'm ready.
there other questions?
Actually, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
So when we do get a bill from them, are we gonna be able to get them to line item the bill better than they have in the past to understand? I just don't want a blank bill for $19,999. How can we get them to better line item what everything went for?
We can request it, but I think sometimes it's hard to tell. They send us, like an overall bill from them, but if you look at the attachments, it's usually something coming from their attorney, their engineer, and then their staff time. They don't really break out they just have staff time and they don't break it out. We can request it, but I just don't know. I can do my best to ask, but they do always attach the engineer's bill and the attorney's bill to that overall. Yeah. So that is.
That'll help a little bit. Okay, all right, thank you.
I have a question. So I know we've gone over our options in the past. Do all the options consist of going over their property?
Yeah, it's our property actually in this option. It's just we're crossing their water. So yes, every option we have to get across Highland Ditch, yes. So no matter what, I think we have to have a crossing agreement.
And do we?
I mean, there could be a huge roundabout way, but we'd be starting all over and it would be a whole new. You know, we're doing environmental survey, 30% design, so we're like, and it's our property. All the other option would be going through 3 other private properties, and who knows what they might require to do. So I think this is our best option, is because it's the town right away. But yeah, we do have to cross. Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah. So I'm not sure how the amount of $20,000 was found. Do you feel comfortable that that will be the maximum amount, that we are not going to go over that?
I feel, so they did mention, I went to their board meeting with our town engineer, Justin Hills. And they said generally crossing agreements around 15,000. So they felt pretty good, because I think they feel now we have a good direction. I think in the past when we were meeting with them and asking about different options, can we be on their property? Can we do this or that? They were charging us every time we were meeting and talking to them about options. But when we came last time with a 30% design, they were ecstatic. They're like, this is great. You guys are making so much progress, or we're proud of you. So I think they feel like we have a direction and they feel more comfortable now. So I think there's a good chance that we can stay within that window.
It's a great question. Thank you. Other questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So I will motion to approve and pay $2,750 fee for Highland Ditch reimbursement letter with a not to exceed amount of $20,000.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any amendments?
Yes.
Mayor Protem?
So before I forget, Attorney Dittman, did you have a suggestion?
Yeah, I have a suggestion for the addition of, I think really now 2 whereas clauses. One and be the 5th whereas clause, a new one. This is the reimbursement letter has an application fee of $2,750 to cover that portion of it. And then a second whereas clause, which would be the second to last one, saying that whereas the reimbursement letter is active until August 29th, 2024. And I think the combination of those 2 whereas clauses would cover your concerns.
So, so the date concern, let's say, well, do we need a motion and a second to discuss the amendments, right?
Yep, that's great.
Okay, can we do both of those amendments at once?
I think you can, yeah. I just say, and you can even do it in the case I move to approve the amendments as stated by Attorney Dittman. That'd probably be sufficient for our purposes.
Okay. Would you like to do that?
I move to approve amendments as stated by Attorney Dittman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. So my concern with having a date on there is, let's say Highland doesn't spend the whole $20,000 by August 29th, 2024. They could maybe find ways to speed that up. So I'm curious about why we want to put an end date.
Well, I think the date goes with the $2,750 fee, not the $20,000.
Correct. And it's for the reimbursement letter. There's a fee for the reimbursement letter. Last year, we submitted and signed a reimbursement letter and paid like $2,000. And they said, you need this for us to review your project. So then when I went back to them again and said, okay, we're ready to give you design, they said, oh, you gotta sign a new letter. I'm like, well, we just paid for one in December. And they said, no, it's good for like a month.
Oh,
So that's why I was like, can we make it good for a year? Because we know we're gonna be going back and forth with design. And we're not going out to advertisements for next summer. So I'm like, can we make it good for a year? So it is attached to the reimbursement letter and that $27.50.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That is why I thought the date was super important, but I understand we can't attach a date to the 20,000.
Okay, okay.
So is that,
That was my confusion.
yeah, so is that correct as you read your whereases?
Yeah, I think that's right, because, if it's August 29th, 2024, or let's say it's August 30th, right, and that this reimbursement letter has expired, we'll have to enter into a new one, which will have a new not to exceed $20,000 amount. They won't do it any other way.
Okay.
They wanted no cap, right? And, our feedback back to them is that we can't do that, so.
Right, so the motion's on the table, but I just really want to say, I appreciate that you have worked to help us as much as possible in communicating with them the importance of our financial limits. And I think that this has gotten us further along in goodwill, which started out with goodwill. And so I truly appreciate it, and I appreciate them for being willing. $20,000 is hard, but it really is going in the right direction. So I feel very good about this, and but with the two just kind of minor details added.
Thank you. Any other comments about the amendment? Okay, we will vote on the amendment.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Any other amendments? Okay, then we will vote on resolution 2023-54 as amended.
And that also passes unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so next we have discussion and direction on the Broadway utility undergrounding, the electric service lines. Director Kaplan.
Hello, Mayor and Trustees. So this project has a few moving parts, or a few parts, right, that are preempting this particular stage of the project. If you went through the memo, I tried to really go through each of the different parts that are leading up to this particular section. You may remember on June 5th, or in any event, we had a contract that came before you on June 5th to do the undergrounding, or to put in the conduit to underground the electric line in the 400 block of Broadway. That's the frontage road between 4th and 5th. And that contract was separated into two phases: to do the actual distribution lines, which are the portion on the town property that run from pole to pole. And you approved that as phase 1. Phase 2 of that project was to work on the service lines and to see what we could do to get those undergrounded. The service lines are the property owner's responsibility. We had an ordinance passed a few months back where we talked about upgrades to service lines would require property owners or upgrades to service panels or other portions of electric would require them to underground their electric line. And you had asked if there were things we could do to try to help some of the property owners. We're also, in this case, looking at businesses on Main Street that we just had discussion on during the workshop, how we might help them. So one of the options that came up was that the town could fund half of the service line undergrounding and the property owners fund the other half. So initially, during the interim from approving phase 1 to going to phase 2, we did talk to the property owners. They were definitely interested in getting their lines undergrounded, but were a little bit concerned about the costs overall. So this particular part of the project is just to get the conduit into the ground. There is still the separate part of getting the wires in, getting everything connected up to the existing services, making sure they all work, removing the overhead portion. That would be a little bit more than what the 78,000 is for the conduit. So hearing some concerns from the business owners and trying to think what the best option was
at our time frame moving forward with the Broadway project. We could look at going ahead and approving the town to cover putting the conduits in, paying for what equates to about half of the overall cost. And then allow the businesses to decide if they wanted to go ahead and move forward now. We could see about doing that with our town contractor and line who does the electric work for the costs that are estimated. It was an estimate, potentially when they go out and look at an individual, it might be less, it might be cheaper for them to do it. It also gives the businesses the opportunity then to look at having a separate electrician come in and do the wiring portion. Because that is something that an electrician can do. They can run the wire in their own property, in their own service, get all the work done. That might be cheaper than having a line contractor who's a little more expensive for working on high voltage power lines do that work. It gets the portion, I shouldn't even say that we need done. We don't need this done. We have the first portion of the distribution lines being done because we are going to be working on that frontage road. We could still leave off doing these service lines, wait till the future, try to find some other options. But again, we're there now. We're going to be working in that area. We can get most of the intrusive underground work done at this point. We could cover our half. And again, then we're still saying now you are responsible for the other half. Or again, as was discussed in the workshop, what options do we have for economic? Maybe you revisit it in the future if you want to make some changes. But we could be saying we're paying our half. It's up to you to get the rest of it done. That does mean leaving the poles up. We would take our distribution lines down, but it would just be the lines into the businesses that would be left. By doing this, we open up a trench that allows the communications to follow in behind us. If we don't do that, it's really the businesses going back to ask the communications to come in and do this work on their own. So the communication lines get taken care of. They pay for that themselves because the utility is working to get off the pole. They have to follow suit and get off the pole. The one part I didn't include in there was the budgeting. And from the last meeting, we had Director Eystone put together that the electric budget was now projected to come in with a $746,000 fund balance. The original budget was looking to have $670,000 in fund balance. So through revenue, less expenses, we are looking right there at $70,000 in an improvement in the fund balance. So we have $70,000 more than expected when we originally did the budget last year. And we need $350,000 in reserve to cover our 3 months. So we do still have $390,000 that could be there you go. We're allocated to other projects. So there is funding.
So this is 390 after that.
350. Correct. That's we have 350 in set aside for reserve.
Yeah.
And on top of that, then there's 390 that would be in fund balance.
Is 390 after this project?
No.
Okay, that's what I said. Thank you. All right, so it's 390 before this project.
Yes.
All right,
So
so
after this project, what would it be?
312.
12.
Questions for Director Kaplan? Mayor Pro Tem?
So,
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
so it would be 312, but we want to keep 350 in there?
No, we have 746
Right.
in there.
Oh, so see, this
We
is
indicate
electric fund
341.
currently. Minus reserves, so that's how much we have in the fund, 390,000 right now.
I meant to put that in the packet.
Yeah, we have a policy that we need to maintain at 350. We still have 390 above that.
Okay, thanks.
So I guess I want to go, my question was, it's gonna cost a business $12,000 to get that above line underground with this particular project at this time,
That
and
would
that's
be
their half.
correct.
Okay, so how many businesses are we paying half for? In other words, I don't feel like I have that number clarified in my head. What's that amount?
7.
Or there's some
Also,
businesses.
the businesses, again, so the total was looking to be about 180,000.
Okay,
78,000 is about half of the project. We were looking at 160,000. Line had to come back and make some changes on what theirs would be for the wire, the connections, removing the overhead. They had a larger estimate that included originally the 300 block worth of the hotel. All of those things, trying to take that out. So it could be slightly less. And again, this potential is what we have for our two contractors is about 160,000 or 80,000 for the conduit, 80,000 for the wire portion. Businesses could potentially find a cheaper option for their portion.
okay. But we're not gonna accidentally come back and say, oh, guess what? We got you to do this, but it is possibly more than $12,000 and we need to make up the difference of an extra, whatever that amount is.
We wouldn't be coming back for them for anything. If they don't want to take on the responsibility of doing it now for the 12,000, it's up to them then. We're paying for our half by covering the conduit. And then they can either take our option and have the undergrounding done and pay that money, or they can go out and look to do it themselves for whatever that costs them, more or less on their own.
Okay, but let's say everybody agrees to do it, would those poles come down?
Yes.
And wouldn't we prefer to get those poles down now versus leaving them up for 3 businesses?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have the option at this point to make the decision as, are we gonna require that all businesses do this?
Well, yeah, I don't know. if you
Is that
can
what
do
we're doing
that.
tonight?
It's their
I don't
service.
think you can legally do that. That's why we're saying we're not forcing them to pay anything. We are paying to put the conduit in the ground. Right? The
Mhm.
conduit, we're gonna cover that cost. And then the business, if they won't put their service in the ground, I don't know of an option to force them to do that unless we pay to do it and remove it. But if we're not gonna pay, the town is not gonna pay an additional 80,000, then we have to leave the pole and they have to keep their wire up.
But we have to leave the pole.
We are hearing, all but 2.
No, we've only heard from 3 back with the actual numbers. 2 concerned, 1 saying, no, I'll do it. But this gave more options to the businesses. Again, I think over time you are getting them to do it. Maybe when they see others doing it, they say, okay, let's go ahead and do that.
But then we're
One
gonna have
business.
patches and,
But
No, the
looks
conduit
good.
will be in now.
Yeah.
We're
and,
putting that
So
in.
the
So the
concern of the-
project, to be clear,
and the paving actually doesn't go right now all the way up to the poles.
okay,
But the conduit can't go right where the poles are.
right.
The conduit has to come out a little bit. We have a gas line in there. So when the conduit comes further south from the poles now, it would go into where the paving is. So we want to get the conduit in because then otherwise we would have patches.
Sure.
But right now, there potentially will still just be gravel where the poles are. And so pulling out the poles or leaving the poles will not affect the paving right there.
Okay, that's, I guess, what I was trying to get to, is at some point, if we. I mean, personally, I'd love to have it all done, no
Sure.
poles, and it's beautiful.
Mhm.
If we can't, because of 1 or 2 businesses or whatever it is, and we want to take the poles out later because they do come around. Then,
cutting the poles
We're
out
not-
won't affect the asphalt.
and it's not affecting anything that we just accomplished, it makes it look good.
I mean, you could say we're gonna pay for everything for everybody, but that would set quite a precedence as we go to underground everywhere.
Yeah, no, I
So,
couldn't do
Yeah.
that.
I think you'll have more than half participate,
Okay.
especially
this
if we
deal.
offer the revolving loan fund at 0% interest.
Well, and they could go out even now
Right,
and go look for their own electrical contractor and say, okay, this is gonna cost me more. I wanna go with your option. Oh, this is gonna cost me less. I'll go do it and do it now. You
right.
may have some who get a bid in at $4,000 and they think even 4,000 is too expensive and don't want to do that. But
That's, yeah, that's where we're at when you're trying to work with the existing infrastructure and how we don't really burden the businesses. Originally, I wasn't sure how we were gonna handle it if those didn't want to do the half and did, and then realized that we do have this option to at least pay for the portion that's really digging up the ground and being very invasive. And the other portion is literally getting someone in to pull wire through. So they do need a little bit of machinery, but it's not like a backhoe and they're digging a trench.
Then I think the question is, if at a point when everyone decides to underground their service, can we cut the pole at grade, or is it gonna make a big mess to rip it up?
And the pulling the poles, usually I haven't seen making a mess. And so we will want to pave over it anyways. We probably want to pull it and fill it properly.
How many poles are there?
Pave
How
over
many
it.
poles will come down? 7? Okay.
Or I don't know. I don't know if there's 7 poles. There's a bunch of services I was trying to think. We already moved 1 pole temporary. It was in the way in front of the auto shop. One, I think there may only be 4
Justin's on there.
or 5.
Justin, do you have any idea how many poles are in the 400 block?
I don't have it on hand, but I want to say in the neighborhood of 4.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So what's the timeline for putting in the conduit?
No.
Now,
Next week.
next week.
No.
Because they would, I'm sorry, I guess they won't do this. I don't know that they would do the services at the same time. They're ready to start phase 1 and get the conduit in for the distribution line, which was approved on June 5th,
Mhm,
prior to the Broadway project.
mhm.
They will probably include additional prep work if we are able to say we're gonna move forward with the distribution lines. Then there is still the final stage. It's been a catch-22. Do I go work with the business more and have to come back to you, or do I want approval from you and then go to the business? We still need their agreement to even come in and trench,
Mhm.
but unless there's reasons I can't think of, or somebody really wants to be, which we've seen, obstinate and not allow something, you would think they're gonna see the benefit of getting this in for themselves
Yeah,
and approve it. I hope they all see that. But I have to get an agreement to allow us to go on their property. So it's not a done deal till we have that.
Are they all kind of aware though this is happening?
They've all gotten emails and they're all probably talking a little bit or trying to understand whether it's worth it, whether they can afford it. And I think people see the value, but they don't know if it's something they can do right now. I can understand that.
So if a business says, I just can't do this, that means we just have an extra pole standing there.
Yeah. Until someone is, or the owner is willing to do it instead of the business.
Yeah,
It really should be the property owner.
yeah. Okay, all right.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, trustee William, this isn't a resolution, so we'll just look for a nod or a no or a shake.
And I appreciate that they're on us. That's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, good, okay, yeah, thank you, this was very thorough,
Try.
did a good job. Okay,
Thank you, Erin.
thanks, Eric,
Grace.
thanks, Tracy. All right, so next up is discussion and direction unbudgeted 2023 projects for consideration. Director Eystone?
Thank you. This is kind of similar to Aaron's memo in that these are various projects that staff has identified that we could potentially use the available fund balance for if we wanted to proceed with these in 2023. 2 of them are from the general fund and 1 of them is from parks. And if we did not, we could choose to move forward with 1, 2, all of them, or none of them, of course, and then rank them and prioritize them with the 2024 budget. So this is, I included all of the fund balances that were discussed last time. So all of those are available in attachment 1. And staff identified 3 projects, like I mentioned. The first one is $6,000 that would come from Parks and Recreation, which would purchase 3 river buoys and associated signage. That one's pretty straightforward, so there's not any additional details on those. The second one is to utilize $76,000 in available fund balance from the general fund for construction of the salt and sand storage facility at Public Works. We did budget $20,000 of this or for this project. So the total project is really now $96,000. So we would be looking for $76,000. And there are additional details in attachment 2. And Dave, I believe, is available here for questions on that project. And then the third project would be to utilize $30,000 from the general fund to make improvements to McConnell Drive. These are really the safety purposes for the middle and high school students and the community that frequents that area. So those improvements would involve striping and 3 ADA sidewalks. And then there's more details on that project in attachment 3. There were a few other projects that were identified with larger price tags. We thought it'd be best to postpone those for 2024 budget discussions. So you'll see those projects definitely related to sidewalks and things of that nature. But these were 3 that staff felt were small enough and maybe had safety issues involved with kind of all 3 is my understanding. So what we would do is look for the direction. If you wanted to move forward with any of them, we could bring them we could move forward with them and then just include it in a future budget amendment like we'll do with the electric undergrounding.
Administrator Simons?
Yes, so Cassie, you're not aware that later this afternoon, I had talked with the mayor and this morning, and then later this afternoon met with our projects team. The mayor had said, are there any projects, because we all know that there are some safety related projects we'd like to do around the elementary school as well. And so this afternoon, I don't know if you sent it to Cassie.
I think Justin copied
Okay.
her on it when he sent it originally.
This afternoon, we did send out the other 2 projects that we had talked about and thought that maybe they were a little too costly for just a fill-in mid-year, but certainly are more than happy to add those into the mix for a discussion tonight. So Justin is on here and Dave, but the 4th project that you could consider is the addition of a sidewalk along 3rd Avenue. And you have 2 options. One could be on just the east side of the 3rd Avenue between High Street and Stickney to help students get to school more safely. That side would have a setback sidewalk, doesn't involve any of those stormwater improvements we need to make on the west side. But it still comes with a price tag of around, was it 110, Brandon or Justin? I'm not seeing. And then on the west side of the road, which we know that kids are more likely to walk, there is an option that our town engineer came up with to do both. It's a pour in place curb, gutter and sidewalk attached. Because the right of way on 3rd Avenue, if you look at the photo that was attached to the email, years ago, a seated board of trustees gave town right of way to those 2 properties. To the 2 properties on 3rd between High and Stickney. And so there's a very narrow right of way there and the sidewalk would have to be all the way up on the curb.
Which properties are those?
It's actually only the one,
Mr. McCain's and Mr. Was.
but McCain's doesn't have.
Oh. Okay.
So
I don't have the same information. You got, I mean,
If you open this,
oh,
It's
that one.
attached.
it's attached to it.
So
So,
if you can see how when south of the alley,
mhm,
the property line goes out another 10 feet or so.
interesting.
That was deeded to those property owners at some point before any of us. And so what it does is it creates that the sidewalk can't be set back away from the curb,
Got it.
which isn't ideal in an elementary school setting.
No.
But So anyway, we put together the price tag, if you want to have that discussion. That is coming in more in the $168,000 range to do that one block.
And I really appreciate you providing this information. We're doing a sidewalk study.
Yes,
So it doesn't make sense to me to pursue a sidewalk until we have the results of the sidewalk study.
yep, that's fine. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that you knew that this was on our priority from a safety perspective.
Yeah.
It just, the price tag was so high, to just put in kind of as a afterthought.
Yeah, it's a little cart before the horse. Yeah. But that being said, when we had this discussion earlier, I wasn't thinking so much of let's put in a sidewalk, but are there other less expensive, even temporary safety improvements that we can look at?
And staff did talk about that. Dave or Justin, if any of you, either of you want to jump in, we definitely talked about we can paint crosswalks at both corners or wherever we decide. We looked at the north side as well, and as you're very much aware, the north side has some challenges too, with storm drainage going through there. And where you would again have to connect to go to the east side of the road for the kids to walk down and over, and I don't know if they'll do it. I don't know if they'll go across the street, which is not logical to your mind on your way to school.
No.
So those are why we took those off and thought we needed to wait for the sidewalk assessment and then really study what is the best way here from storm drainage and sidewalk. But open for discussion, all of these items, Cassie has attached the fund balances so you can see how it would affect the general fund in regard to doing the salt and stand storage building. As you know, this has been a priority for us for 2 years. Unfortunately, our wind speeds increased a couple years ago, and we have to build to 140-mile-per-hour winds. Which, if you remember when we built the ball fields, it added tremendous cost to the backdrops. That's what's making this price tag go way up.
So just to be clear though, this would be considered a permanent facility.
It would be
Right.
a metal structure attached to a concrete foundation.
So okay.
And can somebody refresh my memory? Was there a conversation in the past with CDOT about sharing their facility on
Yes.
36?
They do not share facilities. It created too many issues in communities where they try to keeping track of tons of sand, salt, who's coming in, who's going, they prefer not to.
And this would be out of the Public Works building? Is that-
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So going back to the amount remaining, that one sheet of projected required reserve amount remaining. Can you tell us again, how much do we usually carry over? Like, how much did we carry over in 2023? Do you remember how much did we carry over in 2022? Are we carrying over less or more than previous years?
I'd have to go and do a trend, just to see, but it's not uncommon to carry forward, for various purposes, vacancy savings, just general operational savings. And then we did get a decent amount more revenue than was projected initially. One of the things to keep in mind is when we do our projections for the next budget year, we do them based on the projections of where we think the end of the year is going to happen. And if those are conservative, then that leads the next year's projections to be conservative as well. And that did happen with sales tax.
Okay.
Good question. Go ahead.
Can somebody remind me which budget or which fund the sidewalk improvements come from? Is it the capital fund or general?
General.
It's from general fund. Great, so we could do like 5 sidewalks with our general fund. Can't wait for the assessment.
And when they drain it though.
Other thoughts about these projects?
I think the three makes sense. I would be interested in seeing how much we usually roll over. I would like, a comparison on that would be helpful. I don't feel like I have to see that, it just would be helpful. But those three make all the sense in the world, particularly McConnell.
Well, it's fresh.
Yeah.
I mean, we were out there looking at it. It looks kind of like a black runway, right?
It sure does.
It's just-
Yeah.
It sure does.
New drivers, if, I think we are planning to do, Director Cosgrove has ordered stop signs for in the middle of the road at those crosswalks. But, we are still, we've looked at several different options in regard to striping there to try to improve it.
And do we have an estimate as to when this would take place for the striping?
It'd be, as soon as we can find a contractor to come in, and then it sounds like we'd add in crosswalks potentially near the elementary.
Yeah, what I would love is, if staff could work with the school district and come up with a solution, because for those of you who don't know, right now, there are no crosswalks whatsoever, except for some very painted homemade paw prints. And there are cars parked on both sides of the streets and cars going down the middle of the street during drop off and pickup. And it's just, it's terrifying. So maybe we can, and maybe the solution might be to have a crosswalk and a crossing guard,
Right.
an old fashioned crossing guard. I don't know, but the school district, and maybe the school district would kick in some money.
Well, we could certainly meet with the principal. Today they met with the high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we think? Are we wanting to do these three projects?
I'm good with all three.
Yeah, as long as we're adding in the crosswalks around the elementary school as well.
Or whatever solution the school
Whatever,
district and
yeah.
staff come
Yeah.
up with. Yeah, okay, trustee Williams is in, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, thank you so much for including the buoys and the signage for the river there. I think there was enough close incidences this summer that really made that look like it needed to be necessary. I'm surprised that it's $6,000, but I think it's great.
I
So
think that sounds high or low.
I think it sounds high.
Oh. No, Dave did some research on this one, the buoys, Dave, and, they're,
It's really how we're gonna connect them to make them adjust as far as they float with the fluctuation of the river. That we have to dial in. My guess is it'll be a little bit lower than that, but really have to do some more figuring on how we're gonna make that work
And
successful.
where exactly do those go?
So as you're coming down the river, you go under McConnell and the river starts heading out and there's the big, huge overspill.
Oh, God.
You're talking about,
that's before that.
it's
So it's
before
after
that.
the November hole and before Highland Ditch.
Great.
We would do 3 across there for seasoned boaters should know what they mean.
Yeah.
Based on the color and that kind of thing. But basically, it's another way to just tell people, don't go past this.
Great.
And
I'm all for that.
I'm just saying that I had this conversation and I know people who hang out down there have had this conversation where tubers come in and they're like, now, where does the river circle back into town? Like it's a lazy river. And so.
That would be cool.
It'd be great.
Can we put that in the budget?
Right? So I genuinely have had that conversation with people like, oh no.
All of these projects were listed because of both safety, but also that we feel we can get them all done in this budget year. That's why we're requesting it now. Is then for 2024, we'll bring in those other projects that need more planning and can't be done in the next couple months.
Great. Okay.
Thank
Got your
you.
direction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Invite us to the grand opening of the storage building. Sure.
Oh, hey,
And I'll have to tell you about my tubing adventure this weekend.
Oh, good.
Okay, so grit, grace, and gratitude. Trustee Dottie, I think you have something to say.
Thank you. I have a few words to share with you. Well, I'd like to give you a little bit of background first. I want to thank Mayor Rogan for asking me to lead the planning committee on this. We've been meeting as a volunteer group of residents from various backgrounds since April 20th. And I have to say, Victoria's flood presentation at that first meeting really set the tone and reminded us how important it was for us to steward this event going forward. We've been meeting monthly since then, so we've met about 5 times, and we'll be meeting weekly every Thursday at 10 a.m. at the library if anybody would care to join us. The underlying theme that came out from these monthly meetings was the grit, the grace, and the gratitude that we have experienced in the last 10 years. And for us, what the grit meant was that time period around the actual flood 10 years ago, when we were literally digging ourselves out. And we were trying to help our neighbors and help our neighborhoods, and we were having to evacuate. So a lot of people who were here 10 years ago, they're going to remember that period of grit. Then what we refer to as the grace period is the last 10 years, where we've been, so many Board of Trustees have been working on these flood recovery projects, rebuilding our infrastructure, rebuilding the wastewater treatment plant, rebuilding bridges, etc. That really is the recovery period, the grace period. And now we'd like to think that 10 years later, we're at a moment of gratitude. We'd like to be where we can look back and be thankful for the resilience of our community. We'd like to be thankful for how far we've come. We'd like to be thankful for that sign that was placed at the entrance to Lions as we were making our way back with a day pass that said, you know, this is what has made our community a family now. And I have felt that, having been here since then. I really did feel personally, as well as many members of this committee, that we really did become a big family at that time. And so that's kind of the driving theme, is 10 years of grit, grace, and gratitude, a remembrance of the 2013 flood. You will see here that you were given an outline of the schedule of events. So we put a lot of thought into, you know, what needed to be on offer. You'll notice there are a couple of days. Well, basically the Sunday is the heaviest day. The actual 10th anniversary of the flood will fall on the Monday, September 11th. And as you know, on Mondays, most people work and the kids go to school. So we didn't think that was an appropriate day for a big family-friendly community event. So we have targeted that Sunday for most of the community events. And you'll see that a lot of those events on the Sunday also include outsiders. So people who are coming from outside of Lions as well. Whereas the Monday evening at 6 o'clock in the confluence, there will be a candlelight vigil, and that is more internal, more sacred. That is more for Lions local. So that won't be advertised to the greater community. But you'll see here that on the Tuesday, September 5th, there's going to be a viewing of the documentary Fundamentals of the Flood by Kat Russell. This will be at the library. So that's kind of like leading up to that weekend. On the Saturday, September 9th, Moxie will be hosting an open mic, a very informal gathering where people can share stories and poems and songs from the flood. And then on Sunday, this is where I'm going to be asking for your presence and involvement if you're around at 11 a.m. that morning. And we've purposely set it at 11 a.m., Trustee Williams, because there are a lot of church services here in town that start at 10 and end at 11. So we have probably about an hour and 15, hour and a half with an official remembrance ceremony. This is when we have all of the elected dignitaries coming to give the remarks. Mayor Rogan opening with a proclamation that our our past attorney, Tim Cox, has been working on. There'd be a song and a poem by a student. I think you have the outline there of the ceremony.
Yeah, we sure do.
There'd be some different agencies who were, who have been heavily involved since the flood, and there'd be a tree planting towards the end. And because there would be some dignitaries, we've invited congressmen and state senators and Governor Polis, et cetera, county commissioners, not I don't know that any of them have actually responded as of yet. I think they kind of wait to the last minute to pull their,
Senator Bennett did today. He said they have it on their calendar.
oh,
So unless something
Great.
big happens.
okay, it's wonderful, great. So we know that Senator Bennett is coming. Fantastic. So depending on their schedule, they may want to stay and have lunch afterwards, and it's going to end right around 12:15, 12:30. So it would be the current Board of Trustees, along with any of these elected officials who would be having like a buffet lunch over at Smoking Dave's. And you can see the budget there. Following that luncheon, basically there would be an opening in the afternoon between 12:30 and 4, where there would be several exhibits that Mrs. Paterno over here, president of the LAHC, has taken on. So I would highly recommend the Victoria's flood presentation that will take place right here. And I believe that's going to be around 1:30. There's going to be a setup, like an exhibit at the visitor center portraying that large memorabilia, like the signage, for example, that I was referring to, t-shirts, canvas prints. There'll be an exhibit at the Lions Library with more hands-on memorabilia, like all the books that were written about the flood and photos. The Redstone Museum, of course, is, they already have a permanent display, but they're going to be, this summer, they're working on interviews from that time period with people who went through the flood, and you can pull those up and listen to them. We're hoping to include one of the new homes at Lions Valley Townhomes, so people can see that this is how we've come back from the flood, and this is the housing we have built to replace some of that housing that was lost. And finally, there would be, well, I'm not sure how we're going to incorporate, but there's the elementary school portion with the Jerry Boland bench and stone. And that could be on your way to the museum, I suppose. The other thing that would be happening between 1 and 3 is that there would be 1 hour guided tours. And I guess I didn't mention here, this would be by golf cart. So we would have, I don't know if anybody has done the public art sculpture walk on the Clio app yet. So there's an app called Clio. And so actually, I think Claudia and Town Administrator Simonson are working on a tour that would be uploaded to the Clio app. So basically, golf carts could take off at any point in time with a set of passengers, and they could, there would be a map with stops, and they could just pull that up on the Clio app, and it would actually be read to you, or you could read the text as to what happened there or what has happened there. So really, it's kind of the, I would say the tour that you would give to officials when you're showing them our flood recovery projects, like how far we've come. And I'm not sure if it starts at Town Hall and makes its way to Laverne Johnson.
Sandstone and end at Sandstone.
Start at Sandstone and end at Sandstone. And then towards the end of the afternoon, between 3 and 7, once these golf cart tours are wrapping up and these exhibits, we would have a big community picnic over at Laverne Johnson Park with some live music and hopefully some dance. I still need to reach out to Miami about that, but they were interested in the very beginning. So this would be probably a catered event so that the people volunteering and organizing this aren't having to also make 500 sandwiches and wraps, type of thing. But it would be really simple. It would be handheld foods, so there wouldn't be a lot of waste. And we would encourage people to also bring, their picnic if there's something they want to bring along. So like I said, that would end this Sunday's events. It's kind of a jam-packed day. You're not expected to attend all of it, but I would highly encourage you to join us for the 11 a.m. Official remembrance ceremony. If there's a role you would like to have or something here that interests you, then obviously I welcome you to get involved. The Monday night is going to be much more of a sacred, more intimate gathering. As much as we're planning 500 people at the picnic at Laverne Johnson Park, we're thinking more like maybe 100 to 200 people at the Confluence Circle. So with that in mind, there are a couple of things I need your opinion on. If there's anything, is there anything anybody wants to say about the schedule before I move on to a few questions or comments? Anything? I saw your email, Trustee Williams.
Just concerned about the length of time after that, having run those things.
Yeah.
What is there, if a fair number of those people come, you're at 2 hours.
Well, and we're going to limit them to, so we have a few people.
Unless you have specific ways in which you're intending to do that.
Yeah, so I think already when we talk about so when you see the 20 minutes for the various agencies, we're really going to reach out to all of them and hope that 5 of them respond. And then those 5 get like a certain.
That's dangerous. That's a dangerous game to play.
They'll end up taking 10 minutes each.
Yeah, even if we tell them to.
It is, that means nothing. You're really gonna have to control.
So somebody will have to be there with the timer.
There are ways to do it that are gentle.
And since you have such great experience as MC, I would love for you to step up and MC those.
And I would do that.
That would
because
be
that's gonna a
fantastic.
hand, But I'm assuming you might want to do that.
Who, me?
Yeah.
No, or the mayor.
We have to decide.
Yeah, we could talk about that. I
I'd be
appreciate your
open to
offer.
doing it, but it's
Okay.
gonna need to be managed.
Well,
It will be
and,
managed.
and I mean, so these are like 20 minutes for remarks from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You know that.
That's.
Yeah, but we're not expecting them all to stand up there and talk. We're not expecting them all to show up.
Okay.
They are campaigning. That's why they come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of those there, I think, will show up.
I think they will too, and you know, I don't know, I mean, we can't stop them from talking,
Right.
you know,
So
it's
here's
just tricky.
and I appreciate the feedback, and I'm definitely going to change it from 12:15 to 12:30 as our end time, and we just have to boogie over Smoking Days. It's not that far. And we'll just be
I love the schedule. I think the whole thing looks great. When it comes to that last group, for sure.
Yeah.
What I would do would be ask them for their comments and then have your MC make those comments about FEMA is really grateful that blah, 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 blah. Life Bridge Church was happy that they could blah, 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 blah. As opposed to letting those people actually say something. I would hold that to your elected officials. And I would hold that to the top level of elected officials who are willing to come along with the mayor.
Okay,
That's where you can stay out of trouble.
okay.
But yeah, unfortunately, funerals can turn into 3-hour affairs too, when they just open it up to let anybody speak.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really great feedback, and I love the idea of having somebody who's emceeing this.
Another piece of feedback, if you haven't checked with FEMA, I could get the contact on Friday. I've got another meeting. FEMA tends to like to fund things like this. So I don't know if you're looking for funding.
I think we've already sent out some emails where that's concerned.
But they just, they're doing a huge chunk for TEDx Mile High for our next event.
Oh, wow.
So they've got the money to spend on promotional stuff,
Awesome.
and they're good to work with.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, they've been so helpful
Yeah.
with Lions
Well,
especially.
that department is good to work with. Like they'll do giveaways. They would do a giveaway of a day pack, of a
An
pet
emergency.
pack, things like that. Things that are worth $100. They'll do giveaways on.
Okay,
Yeah, I can get you the contact person for that on Friday.
okay, that would be great. There are a couple of things I need to ask the board how you feel. First is regarding the picnic at Laverne Johnson Park. We've had Spirit Hound reach out to us, and they would like to sponsor a bar. They would like to have a few cocktails there on offer that they would donate, and they would bartend, and people could leave a donation as a fundraiser for Leaf. So it's my understanding that municipally sponsored events don't usually include alcohol. I wanted to see how the board felt about us having alcohol at this event. Like, let's say, for example, let's say music doesn't actually get started until about 4, and we could say that maybe between the hours of 4 and 6, every, adult or, I guess like bracelet, who's been ID'd would be able to have 2 drinks. Like it could be kind of managed that way where you've already been identified as 21 plus, you have a bracelet and maybe you get 2 punches, 1 for each drink. So it wouldn't be like a free for all, but it would be a certain number of cocktails on offer, and it would be a certain number of drinks, and it would be a donation to Leaf. How does that feel having alcohol at this event?
I think if it's more in the evening, I'm okay with that.
Knowing that we'd be providing food.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, so if,
I prefer no alcohol, but if it's raising money, then
It's heavily moderated. Yeah.
I'm honestly, I'm conflicted. It sets a precedent, I wonder if, and I would be okay with it. I mean, if the majority of the board is okay with it, but I would love to ask Spirit Hand if they can think of a non-alcoholic way to contribute, like mocktail, make a mocktail option or something.
So for example, so you would be okay if there was an alcoholic option as long as there was a non-alcoholic option?
I would prefer there not being any alcohol at all, but that's just me. So, but yeah, I mean, just maybe we could ask them what they think of that, you know.
But
they're
that's going with
creative.
a mocktail option.
Well, no, so the majority says A-okay to booze.
Yep.
And I'm asking if the committee can ask Spirit Hound if they can come up with an additional
Yeah.
mocktail.
Okay.
The other thing that was suggested by someone was we could ask that, you know, they're trained to do IVs and stuff, but have
Yeah.
a 2-drink limit.
Right.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
I like do something like that, so it's very clear that the intent here is not that this is
Yeah.
just a huge party. This is really
Yeah.
to symbolize the different barbecues each neighborhood had and just time together
Yeah.
before we all went our own ways.
Yeah.
So, that's another option too, if you want to do something.
And when I say live music, what I'm referring to there is a set of just all the music that artists at the time created around the flood.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of local artists who wrote songs pertaining to the flood.
Great.
So there would definitely be a set just for that. And then maybe we would have a set also showcasing local Lions music.
Mhm.
So there could be 2 sets of music and maybe there's some dancing in between. I will be reaching out to LCF, of course, to see if they would like to have a stand there with non-alcoholic options such as lemonade, iced tea, water, that kind of thing. So we would have that available as
Okay.
well. And maybe people would make a donation to LCF and they could keep that
Great.
donation.
So that's your first request.
That's my first request. Thank you for that. Okay, so just speaking about the budget, I was really surprised that last year we didn't anticipate, when we were in the budget process, we didn't anticipate that this year would be the 10th anniversary of the flood. So we actually don't have a budget item for this event. I think a budget might have been included in here.
Yeah.
Maybe the 3rd page. So you'll see, you know, for the official ceremony, depending on whether we order t-shirts or not, it would be about $1,750. For the exhibits, you might need $500 for miscellaneous posters, signage, you know, hangers, things like that. For the community picnic, it's, you know, depending if we're counting on 500 attendees at $10 each for a picnic, that's about $5,000. And the candlelight vigil, if we're not counting the rocks, which I think the boulders are taken care of, is about 400. So, so you could, you know, I put a grand total there of 11,100, but you could easily subtract the $3,500.
Who's taking care of the boulders?
It would be picked up by the Parks Department since it will become a permanent feature in our park. But either way, I mean, if, I think Trustee Daddy's going to tell you that we are reaching out for some corporate sponsorships, not local.
Yeah.
This is not the type of event that I think locals need to sponsor. We need to be going to the folks that were contractors and engineers that were paid millions of dollars toward our recovery.
Yeah.
So I think, Kim Mitchell and I are sending out sponsorship letters once you guys finalize events tonight. I think we can actually come up with the entire budget through sponsors.
Yeah.
But if not, we need a nod from the board to allocate some of those extra reserves we were just talking about toward this, if possible.
So I'm making a request for up to $10,000. Actually, we're well under that because we're at 7,600 without I was including the boulders in there. So up to 10,000, but knowing that the staff feels really confident about getting at least half of that paid for by sponsors, non-governmental agencies with whom they've worked over the last 10 years and who they've given, you know, hundreds of thousands,
government,
millions of dollars, right? So now is the time to call them and say, hey, how would you like to contribute? I do have an option that might not be popular here, but Claudia and I met with Michael Clausen from Cemex and they would be happy to sponsor the event.
The whole thing?
The whole thing. So those are our options.
I think go to the contractors that we have relationships with and whatever can't get covered there, I'm comfortable with the budget. I'm not comfortable with CMEX sponsoring this event.
So they were happy to provide the tree for the tree planting in Gerald Boland's name at Sandstone Park. That'll be at the end of our official ceremony. They were happy to provide the boulders for the confluence, the gathering circle. Although we have boulders with lion sandstone for $3,500, and they were happy to sponsor the entire. So really, whatever role we'd like them to have, I think that they would be happy to provide.
I'm sure. I'm one person.
Yeah. So again,
I'm with the mayor.
I am as well.
I think I am too.
okay.
I do have a
Yeah, I don't have as big an issue with same-sex fan. That's fine. Yeah.
I have a question about the rocks
Mhm.
in the center, the
Circle.
the circle. I saw a photograph.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that intention is?
Yes, yes, I can. And actually, if I can,
Or if you're getting to that?
I am getting to that
Okay.
actually, because throughout this process, it became really apparent that a candlelight vigil needed to take place. And it became really apparent that this would be the day of the 10th anniversary of the flood, and we needed a really intimate area. And because the confluence was so hard hit, it felt like that was the most appropriate spot to hold this vigil. And as we, Victoria has also been a part of this planning committee, and you had talked about this buyout property, this field that was referred to as the Stacy parcel. It was the Stacy
It
parcel.
was
before the flood.
the parcel. It's over it's 6 acres of land that I put a map, you
Yeah.
received a map. So this is a deed restricted buyout property. There were several different ideas that are included in the actual adopted plan for the site. One of those is in what they call an outdoor classroom. It's a circle area in the confluence where people can meet, whether they want it to be for jam sessions or classrooms or church, or in this case, a gathering for candlelight vigil. So it has always been in the plans to do something like this. And we, the Buster Quarry is interested in working with us, which is great. We haven't had a lot of interaction with them to supply the correct stones and seating arrangement for us to make this piece happen.
So actually in June, some of the committee members, along with Director Cosgrove and Mr. Simonson, we all went out to visit I didn't actually know this buyout property very well. Crystal Way is along one edge of it. Hinkenlooper Way makes its way around. You have the South St. Vrain Creek and the North St. Vrain Creek that meet and become the river, the St. Vrain River from there. And right now it's just kind of been sitting there, right? So we literally looked around to see where would be a good spot. And I can't pull it up on my map right now because my computer's restarting. But if you take a look at that email that Clerk Vasquez sent out, thank you, this one here, thank you for printing that out. So you can see, does everybody see where this parcel is located?
Yeah.
So this was our issue from the very beginning, was trying to explain to people where they were going to meet us for the candlelight vigil. And it was like, where the Rocky Mountain Botanic Gardens are? Well, it's just across from that, right? So yes.
The end of Crystal Way.
Right. So like, how do we put that on a poster? How do we advertise that? Well, we need to name this place. So basically, this is a 6-acre parcel. You have the Rocky Mountain Botanic Gardens here. Here's the South St. Vrain. Here's the North St. Vrain. And right over here, you're right by the river, and you can see Steamboat in the background. This is where we planned that photo that you see with the boulders. So really what we were thinking were 5 big boulders where you could fit 3 school children side by side. So you have 15 on the inner circle. So you can kind of see the drawing here. So there's 5 boulders here, and then the 5 kind of alternating in a separate circle that you could have another 15 school children. So literally you would have a classroom size of 30 children who could sit here. And of course, when the tree fell down at Arn Hayden's property, and it was this big old cottonwood, Claudia rushed to make sure she could secure a slab of that so it could go in the middle of this circle so that nobody would get the idea of starting a campfire or bonfire or any kind of fire.
Great idea.
So we will have something in the middle that people can use, that we could use for this event as well. And I think between Director Cosgrove and Josh Buster from Lion Sandstone, I think this could happen in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, they would do it.
Great.
Yeah, so this should be done. So what I'm asking the board is, because, the committee has been talking about this circle, this gathering circle, and we really like the idea of calling it the confluence circle, but it's set within this park. And because it's time to move on, we really want to stop referring to it as the FEMA buyout property. And so what I'm asking the board to consider, and maybe this needs to go to Parks and Rec first, is could we ask Parks and Rec to consider making this a park, a municipal park, a formal park? And the committee has discussed many ideas around this park, many ideas for naming this park. And we have Monique on this planning committee, who is our historian at the Redstone Museum. And she gave us some history around the south side. Lyons used to be divided up, referred to as the north side and the south side of Maine. And so she said we could call it Southside Park. Also, what I really like about, the St. Vrain Creeks meeting here, I really like the idea of calling it St. Vrain Park.
Okay, so procedurally, that would go to Parks and Rec.
That would go to Parks and Rec.
To discuss. And so let's do that,
Yeah.
so we don't have to name it before the event. But we'll get that going, the permanent name.
Well, the only advantage I see actually, so I know Parks and Rec meets next week, and I know that we meet the week after that. So if we could come up with a name by August 21st, then it would make our advertising a little bit easier when we're explaining to people where we're having this candlelight vigil. It would be so much easier to be able to say at St. Vrain Park.
Except people don't know what St. Vrain Park is.
No, I know, but we would be able to add it to Google Maps, and then people look it up on Google Maps and they can see where St. Vrain Park is. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, if we can get it done by then, great, but I don't think it's gonna stop the process.
The word of mouth.
So I have one little thing that, I'm just gonna put it out there. In doing this, I did it, and I thought it was really good, in terms of location for housing.
Yeah.
And I know that one of the discussions that's come up a few times in the PCDC is, are there opportunities for us to consider renegotiating buyout properties for more dense housing that could be built in areas like this, so that it's meets all the flood standards. And this was one of the areas that, because it's so large. So my only concern is that if we turn it into a park, then we don't give ourselves that opportunity for consideration going forward.
We would have to go to a vote to.
Is that a consideration to build housing there? I thought it was in the floodway.
It is.
It
This-
is.
It's this particular site.
It's a very long-term process to get there as a possibility, but
As you know, planner Kimmett and I are both pretty adamant about affordable housing. We're looking at everything. So yes, we would definitely keep in mind options, potential properties for buyout or buyback. I think FEMA would more likely and be open to those that are in the 500-year flood zone first, 100-year second. Floodway is not an option. So this particular circle sits in the floodway.
okay.
Well, that answers that.
That answers that question, but that's really why I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, I thought the whole point of the buyback was so FEMA didn't ever have to repair it
So they
for
never
another
have
flood.
flood claims.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
But see, some properties after we were remapped,
yeah, okay, that could
some
change.
people elevated and now they're in the 500. They wouldn't have even had to. So, there's a few parcels that I think they might be open to, but that's a much longer term project. But just so I don't know if you can see the flood map, but this circle would be right here, smack dab in the floodway.
And also, doesn't the Hickenlooper Way make their way?
Hickenlooper Way's in the floodway.
And it goes around this whole parcel, right? There's a whole loop there.
Yeah. So that makes me wonder, so we have a comms plan for this? A communications plan for the
Not,
event?
we're waiting to
Wednesday.
get your nod tonight.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
okay. But there will be a communications plan.
of course.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as everybody is okay with it. I just wanted to make sure the board was okay with what we've planned so far.
Great, okay.
Or we will go ahead and start advertising this.
Are we okay?
Is everybody okay with this?
Yeah, that's great work.
Okay, great. And I really hope that you can, be present on that Sunday. That would be
I'm
awesome.
gonna
I don't have a
Okay.
choice.
Well, if you could read the proclamation, the first 5 minutes, that would be great. You
No,
might
I
want to
think
stick around and say hello to Senator Bennett.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to, and I have some other folks that I think we should probably invite too.
Yeah, make sure we get a list of anyone. Very, very nicely. I have to tell you, the people that have heard about this are really excited. They think it's a great way to spend the Sunday afternoon. You know, the National Guardsmen that were here
Yeah.
and the Salvation Army folks.
Mhm.
And FEMA's been here several times, but even DOLA responded with about 10 staff that said, we're gonna be there on a Sunday. I think people want to have this closure. Some folks haven't been on what they're calling the Silver Linings Tour to see how things ended up. I think the committee has done an awesome job with really trying to look at, okay, how do we have enough different exhibits and activities to meet all the individual needs?
Yeah.
So for those folks that are like, I don't want to ever think about this again, I don't want to be involved, fine, don't be involved. For those who want to say, I loved the camaraderie of our picnics, I'm going to be at Laverne only. You know, but then again, for the visitors and the folks that haven't been here in 10 years, you know, they're gonna come in the morning and stay through exhibits and probably go home around 4. But I think we can help our downtown businesses with either a lunch or a dinner out of lots of different visitors based on the time frame they've made this. And then whatever type of closure or just updates people want. And then I really think, you know, this is the 10-year, and then it probably won't be revisited until 25.
Yeah.
And who knows who will be here for that. So I think this is just a really nice way for and then the committee even said, how do we get new people involved? How do we get the new folks that come in here, sign up for utilities and go, you had a flood? You know, how do you get them?
The reporter from the week.
So they've really taken a look at lots of different ways that you might be able to interest families or individuals who aren't very knowledgeable. And then also sticking in tables at the morning group from the National Flood Insurance Program.
Yeah.
So with a big map, I come and see this map and I go, oh my gosh, I have a house I just bought that's in the 100-year. What's that mean? There's somebody here to talk to. So all sorts of different, whatever you need to commemorate this and move on.
And you've covered all the bases. You clearly have covered all the bases, and so it's great work, and it's gonna be.
Well, we have a really diverse group of planning committee members, whether they were here at the time or not, whether they're musicians or not, whether they were victims of the so I feel like we got a lot of great perspectives, and really having you know, Administrator Simonson's perspective is huge. Like I said, that presentation at the beginning really set the tone and just reminded us like how we need to steward this.
Okay.
And I just want to mention one last thing. There are 2 legacies I see leaving behind this 10-year event. One of them is that tour, actually, whether it's a walking tour, a bicycle tour, or a golf cart tour, anybody will be able to pull this up on their Clio map. We're gonna be able to put it on the Town Alliance website that people can access it, the visitor center, like the tourist stuff. So I'm just thinking, because of the EVC and always looking for ways to bring visitors to town, you know, there is that art sculpture tour, but it's great to give another option as a tour. And the other piece is this park. If, you know, Parks and Rec agrees that this would make a great park, I think that's another great legacy that this was, you know, we're talking about silver linings and what was born from the flood. Leaf was born from the flood. Candide was born from the flood. You know, all these community members coming together. And I think this could also be something.
Okay, it's gonna be fantastic. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to trustee reports. I'm not gonna make trustee Dati go first.
I'm ready.
because She hasn't been here, so.
I've got a trustee report ready to go.
Oh, well, I'll start with trustee Williams. We'll give you a break.
Historic Preservation Committee is meeting next Tuesday. Didn't meet last.
Trustee Bowman?
So with the PRC, I talked to them about having a place for the teens to go, and one thing that they suggested was encouraging businesses to do like a night at, you know, a certain night at one business and then Thursdays at another. business. So that's one suggestion. They were talking about how Netherland has a teen center, has a gym, meeting room, etc. It's funded by grants.
Interesting.
So those were a couple suggestions.
Maybe trustee Dati could bring that back to the EBC for them to,
Thank you.
So rotating roster of visiting restaurants, is that your recommendation?
Yeah,
or like the pinball place.
May I suggest that perhaps in the fall, when the Student Advisory Council
Starts again.
starts
Yeah.
up again,
If and when they start up
if
again.
and when,
Hopefully they do.
that might be
Yeah.
something that they can also help spearhead or something.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about winter activities as well, or, for the off season, this could be something that we could start on that off season promoting locals.
That's a great idea.
Anything else?
no, that's everything.
That'll do it. That's good. Okay.
Couple things. So PCDC is not going to meet this coming week because Planner Kemet is going to be away on vacation. So unless there's something that comes up from a development review process that is, urgent or something that planner painter could take on maybe, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So they're not going to meet. I did want to say that, moving on to something else. I did fill out, I went on and did this Lions Housing Futures Plan. And it's really simple. It's easy. It was interesting because you can see, you drop a pin on somewhere in the map of the town and you put in your opinion about what could go there. And, this is very much about housing. But I put things in like, well, you could do a mix or, you can kind of put some stuff. So it's fascinating. I really enjoyed it. It was easy. So I highly recommend it. But the one thing that was interesting was the first place I went to look because I had heard about it, but I couldn't find it. I went to our homepage and then I was thinking I could find some information about it on the homepage and I didn't see anything. And then I didn't see anything in the Friday, like it wasn't in one of our, the blast.
Yeah.
So I just was gonna say from communications, if that could,
Yes, and if you
Like a
want
splash
some of
page.
those as handouts to go to your boards and commissions, because it is easier to just have it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to make prints if you want any or something.
We have
like
stacks
that.
at the library.
Do we have what?
Stacks at the library.
I don't know if there's stacks at the library, but that's the other poster, if you want to see that. I will be meeting with Kim tomorrow, so I will.
Yeah.
It is.
It'd be cool to put some in the library.
yeah. It was really, I think we all should take the time to do it at the very least. So anyway, from a plug standpoint, I think we could do some more. And then what else did I have on my little list? It's not huge. But I had something else, I think. The fire protection meetings that are coming up. It looked like in the utility insert that goes into the utility bills, there was something about 3 fire protection district meetings coming up. I was kind of curious, is there would it be a good idea to have a trustee at one of those? Or if we had 3 that could divide up and attend, or
I was planning
Not-
on going to one of them. I don't know which one, but.
same. And I was just wondering, maybe if we had one other trustee that'd be willing to go to a 3rd one. I
think they're all gonna be the same though, aren't they?
Well, but
Commissioner.
They are, I see them, they're August 15th, August 20th, and August 29th.
I think they're gonna be covering the same information on each of them, but
I think,
maybe staff could find out.
well, it wasn't so much of what they're covering, is hearing their responses.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
One group might have a different response
good
than a
point.
different day.
Mhm.
And I thought we should probably,
So there are
Hear
two
it.
Tuesday evenings from 5:30 to 7:30 and one Sunday morning from 9 to 11.
so I'm willing to take on something. I gotta look at the dates, but
Yeah,
maybe if, we had a
Could
trustee.
you send out something and maybe people could respond?
Yeah,
that would be great. Maybe you could send out a
Yeah.
doodle or something.
I can.
yeah,
And
super.
then take notes and.
Yeah.
Kind of listen.
Just the
Yeah.
listening here,
Yeah.
get good insight to bring
I know.
back that perhaps we should be considering. And so that was all I had.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Trustee Edding.
So I missed the August 2nd UEB meeting. I was at Red Rocks, so I guess that's good. So Aaron, they did continue the discussion on the solar farm and the battery storage project.
Yeah.
Is it anything that was just?
Oh, I better pull up my agenda to remember what Greg's gonna ask me to talk about. So yeah, a lot of the discussion was the solar farm battery storage. Partially some new options for storage that it wouldn't have to be just batteries that was mentioned. Discussions on how we talk to DOLA, what they might be willing to fund. This NREL review that's ongoing. I brought them up to date on our last meeting. And then during that, I guess we did get notice that the NEVI funding grant, it wasn't our own grant, but we said we would support this company Jewel to put in the level 3, I forget which if it goes up or down, but the higher level charging stations, and that got awarded to them. So they could potentially put in these chargers here. They would cover it. The big item with that is they also have to have storage for their particular version of the project because they want to make sure they're not having any high impact on our grid. And so they would put in a system that would monitor it. If it got to be too much electricity coming out of the grid at once, their storage system would cover that so that we wouldn't need to upgrade our grid, but something to look into. And then we also talked a little bit about the wastewater treatment plant and thoughts on moving forward there for the meeting we had and the visit next week. Administrator Simonson mentioned, and then they started talking about budget items for next year.
There you go. I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Trustee Dati.
Well, actually, I'm hoping I can rely on Mayor Rogan and Administrator Simonson to talk about the EVC meeting that happened in July because I wasn't there. Typically, they canceled the one in July. But in this case, June was canceled and July was rescheduled. It was rescheduled for
I
July.
can talk about it.
So thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate that. I will be at the next meeting, August 16th. But if you have anything you'd like to share.
Do you have anything else? I'll include it. in my-
Okay, great. Yes, I would like to talk about housing and human services.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So we have the chair here. I wasn't at the last meeting and our next meeting is on Monday, but here's what I have for an update from Lions Valley Townhomes. When I was here in June, I announced that 4 families would be moving onto Carter Court and that 8 families would be moving in July to Carter Drive and Lively Court. There has been a delay in construction and those move-in dates have been pushed back to end of August for 4 of those families and mid-September for 4 of those families. So right now we have 3 families. 1 will be moving in this week to that first wave that happened in June, end of June. The other 8 will be moving in, hopefully 4 end of August and 4 in mid-September. As of today, Highland Property Management Company has emailed every applicant to say whether they were approved or not. Of the 50 applicants, 10 did not qualify. They were either overqualified income-wise, or they were full students, or in one case, their citizenship status was pending. So just to summarize here, of the remaining applicants who have been qualified, 3 of them moved in June, 1 will be moving in this week. 4 will move in end of August, 4 will move in end of September. There are 13 slated to move in October and 15 by November 15th. So everything has been pushed back by about a month or so, and we hope to have everybody moved in by mid-November. The good news is that we still have 4 2-bedroom townhomes available. So I would like to encourage people who are one of those 4 priorities to still drop off applications here at Town Hall or at Centennial Park Apartments. So that is something I was surprised to learn today, that not all units have been filled.
Well, and I think the general thought is people think that they have been, so maybe Summit could communicate it, or the property management company could communicate it to folks so that they know. Because I've heard people say, oh, well, I missed that vote. you know?
Right. Well, and communication has been a bit of an issue this summer with applicants, so I'm not sure. I will bring that back to Highland Property Management Company. We're really thankful to have the spreadsheet. Chair Sparks and I have spent a good few hours, each of us contacting on behalf of Highland Property, just making sure people knew that they had been assigned a unit and that they had an estimated move-in date. So all of this is happening like now, and Wednesday, all applicants will be coming to the library to meet with Highland Property Management Company. And so I'll make a point of stopping in as well, because they're coming in to update their applications.
Okay.
So I'll make a point of stopping in and asking her to just make sure that communication gets out.
That's great.
Okay. So it's happening, it's just not happening as fast as we'd like it to.
Yeah, never is. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate
welcome.
it. Chair Sparks, thank you. Thank you again for all your hard work on this commission. Okay, so I did attend the EVC meeting. We had some technical room difficulties, so the group had to move outside. And we had a short presentation from Taylor Raymond, who works for the city of Boulder, about the countywide minimum wage efforts, which you may have read about or heard about. There's a lot of pressure for Lions to get on board. And I had a hard time getting a sense of the EBC, what they thought about it. So maybe you could ask them. At some point, I anticipate that the folks who are spearheading this effort are gonna come and want to give their presentation to the board so that we can think about it, get some more information, which I think is great. They're still working out the details of it, but it looks like the county is gonna move forward with it. So that's just businesses that are in the county, not in a municipality. And then Longmont, Boulder, I think Louisville has signed on. So, I communicate that Lions is very different than these communities. We don't have a Costco to bear the burden, So anyway, that conversation is going to be ongoing. So that was pretty much what the EVC talked about during that time. On Wednesday, I'm going to the St. Vrain Valley School District Convocation, which is I've never been to one, but I got invited, so I'll be going to that.
How is that different from a graduation?
A convocation, it's done at the beginning of the school year, I believe. I'll report back.
That'd be great.
Last week I attended the consortium of cities meeting on Wednesday night, and with the help of Planner Kimmett, I was able to present on affordable housing in Lyons. And at the end of my presentation got applause. Several of the other towns said, well, shoot, if Lyons can do this, we can do this. There's no reason we can't.
I got contacted by Erie today, who wants to bring like a dozen staff. So can we get through September?
Right?
Yeah. Mayor Brooks was like, I'm gonna be talking to you. So, which is great, it was great to hear. And then, so Commissioner Loachman is going to be at the concert on Wednesday, and she may be bringing some other folks with her. But just know that she'll be there. She loves talking to people, and I'll end that there, unless there's any questions. Yes.
We're looking for ideas to raise $50,000. What if we started charging these people for our ideas and how our flood recovery? I see all these organizations reaching out to Lions. I'm gonna start saying, okay, hold on, there's a price to that.
Well, then they can say there's a price to what we want.
Sure.
So, I don't think partnership is great.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Can we please have a summary of action items?
Yes, number one, I've got, board would like to see an incentivization ideas for economic development. The board would also like a Tamburello / Eastern Corridor update at an upcoming meeting. Develop a list of revenue generating ideas, and I think this is headed towards the EBC. Meet with Planet Bluegrass post festival season, to discuss.
Additional concerts. Winter. Concerts.
I'm to send the budget calendar to the board.
That's done.
Oh, thank you. Football jerseys, funding source for middle school football team. We're supposed to find out where
Or
that is
figure out
at.
who the organization is.
Who's getting it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trustee Ellison again probably is the one.
Yeah.
The board would also like an update from the Lions Creative District or Lions, is it Lions Creates?
It's Lions Create.
Yeah, Lions Creates. The board would also like to see a rollover comparison from finance. And staff is to work with the elementary school and or the school district on crosswalks at the elementary school. The Parks and Rec Commission is to potentially discuss adopting the Stacy parcel as a formal park, and also naming it. They'd like to see the Student Advisory Commission to work on a rotating team night at local establishments when they reconvene. The next thing is add the Lions Housing Future Survey link to the website and e-blast. And then I am to pull the board on attending the Lions Fire Protection District meetings.
And only one last one. Pursue camping in Bowman. Dry and or wet camping options. Or I'll probably do that as part of the budgets, if that works for folks.
Attorney Dittman, did you have anything else?
The only other thing is the amendments to the resolution, which we've already sent to Dolores and Victoria.
I got that. Question, I know trustee Daddy requested the 10,000, was that was approved?
Yeah,
So I just
up
made
to-
it.
Yeah.
If needed.
If needed.
We'll report back. So, you're gonna see some calls for.
Calls for like flood memorabilia?
Yeah, like unique flood memorabilia, like
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
That should be out for others to see, or if you have one of the many different flood T-shirts. The group thinks it'd be fun to hang those and let people reminisce about all those different, we know of at least a dozen. But if you have any in good shape, you wanna donate to the
Reach
neighborhood.
out to me. We'll put name tags on and make sure they get back to you. We're hoping to do like a clothesline in the park, all the flood t-shirts.
People driving by all look like a flag kind of. and-
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for hanging in there, Claudia.
Absolutely.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay.
That motion passed.
Thank you, everyone.
For hanging.
Have a good night.
Nice to see audience.
Night, Brandon. Good night,
Night.
Brandon. Good night, Marcy. Good night, Dave. You're gonna get your drawing.
Yeah.